Welcome to a brand new day on the AM show. Boy, are we glad to have you join us this Tuesday morning as we get down, but not dirty, to serve you the finest of morning television. My name is Benjamin Akakbo. Thank you for joining. Now, coming up shortly, I'll be serving the news, and right after that, we get into the papers, we slice and dice with Executive Director, Media Foundation for West Africa, Suhuyini Brahima. He is our guest for this morning. And then we get into our big stories, and we're going to be contemplating, first of all, how government has fared in handling the affairs of the state. We'll be talking about governance and the economy. Our guests on that beat, Alhassan Suhuyini as Member of Parliament, Tamale North, Dr. Dixon Adumakukisi. It's been a while. He's Member of Parliament for Anya Sontum. Both of them join us for that conversation. But if you're a lover of the National Science and Math Quiz, then guess what? There's good news for you because it's back. Yes, the regional qualifiers commence from today. And we've got our men on the ground to check out what exactly is happening. Men and women, of course. Expect a daily dose of that on the AM show. But also coming up this morning, we're going to be talking about the extractive sector. The Ghana Mining and Energy Summit is a biennial conference and exhibition organized by the Ghana Chamber of Mines with endorsement from the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, the Minerals Commission, and the Environmental Protection Agency. Now, the GMES has grown exponentially since the maiden event in 2013 and attracts industry participants from around the globe. Well, GMES 2023, the fifth summit in the series, is themed Harnessing Mining and Energy Potential for Sustainable National Development. We'll be bringing you details of that later on the show. Once more, yesterday we hosted MultiChoice. Today we'll be speaking to another sponsor of the Hits FM, Rep Your Jersey 2023. Which team are you representing? Well, come Saturday 10 a.m., all roads lead to the Aviation Social Center. Let's meet up there, even as we gear up for the UEFA Champions League final. Will the citizens take it for the first time? Will it be Inter Milan? Well, we'll be finding out come Saturday. That's the lineup for today. Don't forget, share your thoughts with us when we activate the phone lines at the end of the show, and drop us a message in the course of the live stream. Up next, the news. Welcome to the news on the AM show. In our first story, experts in the extractive industry are warning of grave consequences if Ghana goes ahead to extract bauxite in the Etiwa forest. It's been estimated that 1.7 trillion Ghana cedis will be spent in 2023 on clean technologies due to the dramatic spike in demand for metals and minerals worldwide. This has raised concerns among environmentalists, civil society, and industry about the need to decarbonize the process for extraction. Co-chair of the Ghana Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, Dr. Steve Manteau, is warning any attempt by government to degrade the Etiwa forest will not augur well for the country. Aisha Ibrahim joined Arosha Ghana and some civil society groups in the Etiwa forest and filed this report.
Between year 2000 and 2019, 3,264 kilometers square of forest was directly lost due to industrial mining, with 80% occurring in Ghana, Brazil, Indonesia, and Suriname. Ghana signed on to the Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative in 2003 and is among 55 countries that have agreed to a common set of rules to promote good governance in the management of its natural resources. The Etiwa Range is the site of an important forest reserve and the source of three major rivers. It contains ancient bauxitic soils.
Experts say there's enough bauxite in this forest, but we must be cautious of the destruction that we can cause by thinking of exploiting these bauxites and other minerals in this forest.
Etiwa has enormous resources that can generate revenues for the state. The medicinal plants, the water sources from here, a lot of the rivers drain from from this forest. We are talking about the Densu, we are talking about Brim, we are talking about Ayensu. They all take their source from the forest. So if we are going to destroy this forest, that invariably is going to mean that we are destroying our water sources, and therefore quantifying what the effect will be downstream. Those of us who rely on these rivers for drinking water is just unthinkable. And so we need at all costs to be able to identify certain land areas in this country that are no-go areas for mining, based on what purpose they serve and how they contribute to our own human development.
In the middle of the Tiwa forest is the Supon River, which feeds into the Birim River, a key source of drinking water for the people in the eastern region.
We are currently at the Supon River in the Etiwa forest. You can see how clean the water is, but if you move just a little further from here, you will see that the water has been destroyed and you cannot even think of drinking the water.
Deputy National Director of Conservationist Group, Arocha Ghana, Darrell Bosu, says the current high turbidity level of the river, which stands at 11.5 NTU, must prompt government to maintain its quality.
Most of these communities don't have access to pipe-borne water, so when these rivers flow out, that is where they fetch for their daily use and also for other domestic and industrial activities. And we believe that if we want to sustain the activities of communities and their livelihood and also their health, rivers like these, which is devoid of contamination, needs to be prioritized and protected. But what we have also seen is that you can't have clear rivers like these without forests. And that is why we believe that Atiwa, which is on record to be a critical hydrological gem for Ghana, must be protected in the long term, because already, aside Sejimase, there are about 5 million other people who depend on rivers coming from the forest. And they go from people in the city, in Accra, to central region, and even to the eastern region, and even connecting to River Pra, which serves people in the western region. So it's clearly an important ecosystem that we cannot allow anything to touch it. Now, if you step out of this forest, you realize that the rivers there are very, very polluted. And it's all because there's illegal activities going on there.
Programs Officer West Africa at the Ford Foundation, Emmanuel Koyuli, says the next EITI conference, scheduled for June 13 this year, will deliberate on sanctioning member countries who disobey the rules on protecting their natural resources.
I think it's important to include sanctions into the process. Unfortunately, the EITI process, first of all, is voluntary, so it's not an initiative that can force governments to set. But it's important that once a country makes commitments, like Ghana and many other countries have made commitment to the process, that they include very stringent sanctions, so that if you don't comply and ensuring that your communities are protected in this process, then you either are kicked out, and not just being kicked out from the EITI process, but other sanctions, including financial sanctions.
Now, the Bono East Regional Manager of the Environmental Protection Agency, Anthony Dua, is asking stakeholders and the general public to work towards ensuring that the Tano River, which is the major source of drinking water for the people of the area, is protected from plastic pollution. He made this call during a brief ceremony in Techiman to mark this year's World Environment Day, which was marked under the theme, Beat Plastic Pollution.
Led by the United Nations Environment Programme and marked annually on June 5 since 1973, the World Environment Day has grown to become one of the biggest global platforms for environmental outreach, with millions across the world engaging to protect the planet. Here in the Techiman municipality of the Bono East region, regional authorities of the Environmental Protection Agency, together with other stakeholders, observed the celebrations under the theme, Protect Tano River from Plastic Pollution. Regional EPA boss Anthony Diaz says there is a need to protect the source of the Tano River, which has over the years been the major source of drinking water for the people of the region.
So the essence of us here is to embrace the World Environment Day celebration by getting actively involved through these various activities to create the awareness among the community members and the citizens around. The Tano River is so dear to the people of Boni East and Ahafo, because this is where it takes its source and it ends up in the Gulf of Guinea. Therefore, if pollution takes place at the upstream where it sources, then you can imagine what happens to downstream users. So it is important for us here to know that we have to protect, preserve Tano River, which happens to be our resource, because that is the basis upon which we can all boast of ourselves.
Mr. Anthony highlighted that it is important for stakeholders to work towards adopting sustainable means of educating the populace, particularly school-going children, on reasons why they must desist from dumping plastics into nearby rivers.
Issues that has to do with plastic pollution is not a one day. You realize that in the presentation we said there must be a sustained effort, continuous education. This must not stop. The education must continue from all levels, from 5 first cycles. To realize that we have in our midst the JSS and the school people who are all here to really know why they must beat plastic pollution. So we have to look at sustained efforts at trying to educate the populace. Then we also have to adopt best practices. We must also make sure that at least we promote what is called waste segregation, so that at the end of the day, the plastics can be segregated from the organics, so that organics can be used for compost, and a little of this will go to the landfill side.
Chairman of the occasion and Benkumhino of the Techiman Traditional Council, Okunji Aman Kesi Bese.
Where does the person put the thing? Those who have vehicles, they can put in their vehicles until they get home. But others, where do they put them? So as we blame the system, we must also blame lack of the facility to ensure that the person will put the thing at the right place. So that one, I side with whoever will say that the dustbins are not there, and therefore it becomes natural that when you finish whatever you want to do with the plastic, you throw it down there.
He underscored the negative health effects of keeping warm food in plastics and called on the populace to revisit the use of leaves in place of plastics as another form of beating plastic pollution.
We apologize for the hitches in sound in that video. Now, the Department of Environment and Sustainability Sciences at the University for Development Studies has begun a research to convert plastic waste to tiles for the construction industry. They will convert plastic, which has become a nuisance in society, to a business venture which the department believes will get people interested in gathering plastic waste for income. Northern Region's Martina Bugri now reports.
The cleanup exercise embarked by the Department of Environment and Sustainability Sciences was to mark World Environment Day. Speaking at the end of the cleanup, the head of Department of the Environment and Sustainability Sciences, Dr. Jibodi Ajodoke, said the aim of the research is to add value to plastic waste.
Currently in the department we are researching into microplastics and their effects on aquatic organisms like fish. We also have other researchers working on adding value to the plastic waste, and so converting the plastics into other useful equipment or useful things like towels. We also have others working into the management, looking at the solutions of how to pay for the waste that is generated, or how to create some value out of the plastics so that we don't see it lying or littered all around. So the department is working on research in several fronts, and I'm very happy with the collaboration and the support from the Ghana Environmental Protection Agency, the Northern Region. We have also the West Africa Center for Water, Irrigation and Sustainable Agriculture. We have the DACE Media, the Grow2, and then Arocha, Ghana, also supporting the department in this.
The chief of Nyankpala, Na Ibrahim Mahama, assured the university community there is total peace in Nyankpala and urged them to disregard rumor that the area is not peaceful.
And that the university here is a prestigious entity. It is an entity they are very proud of. And they are so elated that they want to give their best to the development of the university. And that when they were to establish the Dongo University, some of them were skeptical. They thought they were going to close the university here and establish that one there. So some of them had to run around just to ask people what is happening. But they are still proud that this one is here.
Now from there, we head to the Attorney General, who is reviewing a draft operations and maintenance contract between the Tema Oil Refinery and a private investor to commence the process of revamping the refinery. Deputy Energy Minister Herbert Krapah says once the lawyers and engineers are done with the process, government is hopeful that TOR will bring the refinery of crude in the country. Martin Abugri again.
Led by the Deputy Minister of Energy and the CEO of GNPC, were in the northern and Savannah regions to assess the progress of work in the prospecting of oil in the Voltarian Basin. Herbert Krapah said what TOR needs now is investment to put it in shape.
Dream that we discover oil onshore, and therefore means that we have a lot of traffic from international oil companies coming to places such as this to participate and engage in oil trading activities. Good news. And we've seen that the lessons from places such as Tema Oil Refinery tell us that modern technology is the way. When your machinery are old and your systems are not very functional, we see that there's a lot of wastage. And I think what is important is that we utilize those lessons. Currently, government is, through the Ministry of Energy, is working to bring in a strategic private partner to help to revive TOR. In terms of investment, what is needed in TOR is a matter of investment. And the Attorney General is reviewing the draft operations and maintenance contract, and once the lawyers have ticked it and the engineers, the technical people have ticked it, we hope that we can see a revived TOR.
The CEO of the GNPC, Opoku Ahunye Dankwa, on his part said the project brings huge potentials to the northern and Savannah regions and a game changer for the country.
So drilling a well will allow us to confirm our inferences from what we've done with the seismic. The goal is to do this as quickly as possible, because whenever you look at the time value of money, the faster we can get oil out of the ground, the better it is for this area and the country. So the goal is to drill hopefully Q1 2024.
The team earlier paid a courtesy call on the Northern Regional Minister, Shani Al-Hassan Shaibu, who assured them of a peaceful environment for work to progress.
Apart from the agricultural activities that we engage in the northern region, we do not have any commercial entities that would engage so many people. So if we do this work properly, I am just imagining the number of people who stand to benefit from this. And let me also assure you that the northern region is very peaceful, very, very peaceful. Those days of those chieftaincy things is over. And I can assure you that we are ready to engage whoever is ready to bring progress and prosperity to our people.
The Deputy Minister for Energy on his part said the Voltarian Basin covers 7 regions and over 200 communities.
Perhaps finally and equally very critically is to take feedback from people like you. Very, very important aspect of the work that is being done. This project, as I understand, covers about 7 regions. The northern region is a significant part of the area that it covers. Northeast as well, Savannah, Ashanti, Bono, Eastern and Oti regions, covering some 200 communities and then a number of districts.
Now, research has shown that about 650,000 people in Ghana suffer from severe mental disorder. 2,166,000 suffer from a moderate to mild mental disorder. The Greater Accra Regional Hospital has put together a week-long activity to ensure cases regarding mental health are well attended to.
1 out of every 10 people has a mental health condition that remains unreported. Experts say if left unreported, undocumented, and thus untreated, episodes will increase, which might affect their well-being. Medical Director of the Greater Accra Regional Hospital, Dr. Emmanuel Stromfignon, explained the motive behind the Mental Health Week.
That there is a standard way that everybody behaves and everybody thinks within certain frames of space. And so if somebody's behavior or the thinking processes or behavior is beginning to be different, it may be in a very slight manner, it's beginning to be different, then we should quickly support the person to get help from a clinical psychology unit. And Ghana Health Service had made sure that all hospitals have a clinical psychology unit where you can just walk to. You don't have to be referred. You can just come to any big hospital and ask where is the clinical psychology unit. And then you will be directed there. And then you can receive the care.
Chief Clinical Psychologist of the Ghana Health Service, Dr. Charlotte Meyers, also added that most people are preoccupied with other aspects of their physical health while ignoring their mental health.
You know, people always talk about physical health. They never talk about mental health. And they forget the fact that it's the mind that is carrying everybody. So that is why we have taken it upon ourselves to talk about mental health, so that you will be aware that aside everything, it's your mind that is carrying you. When the mind is not thinking well, it will affect how you feel and it will affect how you behave. So the mind is so powerful that it controls the body as a whole.
Outreach to communities and other programs are lined up in the Awareness Week. Jacqueline Ansuma Yeboah reporting for Joy News.
And on that note of mental health, we cap off the news. But up next, we slice and dice the newspapers. Do stay. Welcome back on the AM show. Time now for us to dig into the newspapers. We're joined by Executive Director, Media Foundation for West Africa, Sulemana Brima. But before I bring in Mr. Brima, let's just let you know, Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic is offering something fantabulous, okay? I think we could easily say it is an offer that is supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. That is just me being crazy in the morning. But anyway, it's a super duper offer they're making you, and you should be checking out your health. I don't know why, but in the last few days, I have been getting people talking more about prostate issues, prostate situations, not checking, and then what happened in the aftermath. You don't want to be caught pants down, literally, when it comes to prostate. So you have to get yourself checked. Now, if you're a woman, your fertility counts, especially if you are hoping to have children in the future, which is why you shouldn't take any of these for granted. Now, if you're concerned about any of these and you've not really been checking yourself, or if you've been checking but you've not done so recently, make tracks to Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. Here's where you can find them. Fortunately, they're all over the place. Here in Accra, they are at Spintex opposite the Shell signboard. In Kumasi, Kronum Abohia, behind the Angel Educational Complex. There's also Takrady Anaje State. That's where you can find them. Tema Community 22, Techiman Hanso and Esiama and Zema. You should give them a call. And these are the numbers you can do that on. 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 321. End Point Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease, but just the start of the news review. Mr. Brimer, a very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Ben. Thanks for having me.
It, as the Bible will say, it rejoices my heart every time we get to discuss matters of national scope. Thank you so much for always making the time for us. We appreciate you. I'm sure Ghana appreciates you as well. Before we get into the papers, as I would always do, Green Ghana Day is coming up. It's just 3 days away. Green Ghana Day, where we're going to plant more trees. At what expense, we still do not know, and all of that. But good initiative. At the same time, put that side by side with what is happening with the Etiwa Forest. If you followed our news this morning, you would have seen the people there, Dr. Steve Manteau, our very own Aisha Ibrahim, Daryl Bosu of Arusha, Ghana, and other environmentalists saying we should leave it be, because already with all the pollution we've done to our water bodies and others on the back of Galamsey, if we touched that, it could be disastrous. There's also, since I've not been able to get your take yet on the Domelevo situation, I mean, I'm just throwing some ideas your way. Any quick thoughts you'd like us to percolate before we get into the papers?
Well, I think the Green Ghana Day is certainly a great initiative. We are at a time where climate crisis is a global crisis, and so every step that we will take as a country to contribute our quota to making our environment better and contributing to the efforts to deal with the ongoing global crisis is something that I think is worthwhile, and we need to all put our hands together and contribute towards the success of the Green Ghana Day. It may have challenges as usual, and as with any policy, but we need to focus on how to deal with the challenges rather than maybe make it something that would not work. And that, of course, ties into the issue around Atiwa Forest. And I fully endorse the advocacy by the individuals and groups who are saying that, look, at least let's just have this forest preserved as something that our grandchildren would grow up and see that when we say a forest, this is what it is. And we used to have as many of these, but they are all gone. Rather than, go into it, destroy it for purposes of extracting minerals. I don't know how much we would have to extract in terms of minerals to be able to make it as a country. I think we still have a lot to mine outside of these forest reserves. And I think that I fully endorse the effort to keep forests intact. On Dome level, I think that is a massive embarrassment for the president and his team, because at the time, those of us who were against it, we're made to feel that we don't know what we are talking about, to the point where when the man tried to challenge the earlier decision, the sanction was even increased in terms of the number of days that he was supposed to be on leave. So for me, it's a colossal embarrassment for the president, for the steps that he took. But for all you know, they were also deliberate about it. They knew perhaps what they were doing was unconstitutional, but in order to protect certain people in government, they needed to sacrifice Dome level in an unconstitutional way. For me, what is worrying is the questions that I asked yesterday somewhere, that so Dome level has retired, the president's actions were unconstitutional, and is that the end? So the president, anytime the president conducts himself or makes an unconstitutional decision, if that decision has already impacted on some individuals, then the Supreme Court determines that, well, it was unconstitutional, but because the people have already suffered the consequences of the action, the president suffers no consequences. Is that what we are saying? I'm not a lawyer. You are a lawyer, and a first-class lawyer at that. You may be in a better position to educate all of us. But I don't think that we should put it in a position.
I am not a lawyer yet. I've not done my professional bit. But yes, I follow legal matters closely. And that was a bit of a curveball for those on the legal front. And that's why you saw CSOs, all of you banded together to kick against it. But the executive had its way. Maybe what we know for certain is that this may be some sort of, not just a test case now, because there's been a ruling on that situation, but something that other members of the executive, other presidents coming, would be able to look at and steer clear of such, decisions. And, interestingly, there was another situation under former President Mahama that people were using to equalize, and say that, well, there was something somewhat similar. And so if we also did something like this, it is nothing to cry foul about. And that is a problem for me. Equalization in our politics. When are we going to make any tracks? So it's quite a situation.
It really shows the fact that these people who are leading us as politicians are really not interested in the progress of our country. They are basically interested in self-centered issues, things that would inure to their own personal benefits. And it's usually a question of power, and power in order to grab money. And so as citizens, we need to continue to up our game. I think what has happened is really unfortunate. And it's also very unfortunate that the Supreme Court couldn't make a decision at the time that the matter was of relevance, and then had to only make this decision, which basically the usefulness of it is maybe future actions by presidents. But for me, the fact that the president has been deeply embarrassed by this decision of the Supreme Court, that is if he is for me quite significant, because it was an action meant to protect the interest of certain powerful people who had been found to have done wrong things, for which Domolevo was surcharging them and asking them to pay monies back to the state.
Interesting thoughts. When you said a question of power, what came to mind was Bessie Head. I think she's passed on. Bessie Head, the author, she has a book called A Question of Power. So when you used that phrase, it actually came to mind. But let's get into the newspapers. Later, if should I forget, I would want to run this by you. So the gender minister says, in terms of child begging on the streets, the mendicants we see, the menace can be eradicated if people stop giving alms. Later, at the tail end, I'd like to take your thoughts on that. But the Daily Guide this morning, packed activities as Parliament resumes today. That story is on page 6. There's also Boga MP. Burger, but we pronounce it Boga. So Boga MP not qualified to contest. That's the Supreme Court. And then EC MPP rebut NDC Asin North by-election claims. And this bit, these two political stories, crucial ones, we have to get into them. And Kwapa Koko petitions the CJ. On the back page, Messi wants Barca return. Real eye Kane as Benzema replacement. Karim Benzema, of course, leaving the club after how many years now? Is it so many years? 14 plus? And some have suggested Victor Osimhen, the Nigerian who plays with the Neapolitans, that is Napoli in Italy. And those are the stories there. But let me quickly get to page 3, where the meat of the matter is. So the Supreme Court has provided detailed reasons it directed Parliament to strike out the name of James Jachikwason from its record as member of the House representing the people of Asin North constituency in the Central Region. According to the Apex Court, Mr. Kwason did not meet the constitutional requirement for contesting the seat of Parliament, as he owed allegiance to another country at the time of picking up his nomination forms, contrary to Article 94.2a of the 1992 Constitution. Quote, "We state without any equivocation that Article 94.2a means that to be qualified to be a member of Parliament, a citizen of Ghana must not hold any other citizenship at the time when nominations are opened by the Electoral Commission for registration of candidates for election as members of Parliament." The court held in its interpretation of the constitutional article. Again, Mr. Quayson was booted out of Parliament last week by a 7-member panel of the Supreme Court, presided over by Justice Jones Doche and assisted by Justices Nene Amegacha, and there's a tall list. It was the opinion of the court that the EC allowing him to contest the election without showing evidence of renunciation of his Canadian citizenship was unconstitutional, which then means that moving forward, where such cases arise, people must have the evidence that they have renounced whichever other citizenship, and at the time of contesting, they must not owe allegiance to another country. That is the situation there. But let me tie in the other politics-related matters so you can digest both of them. EC NPP rebut NDC Asin North by-election claims. Now, the Electoral Commission has dismissed claims made by the NDC that the MPP is collaborating with the Commission for the purpose of transferring the vote of one Charles Opoku to the Asin North constituency to enable him contest the upcoming by-election in the said constituency. According to the Commission, the allegations are palpably false. The National Communications Officer of the NDC, Sami Jemfi, alleged in a statement that, quote, this illegal move is to aid the said Charles Opoku to contest in the MPP parliamentary primaries to select a candidate for the upcoming Asin North by-election. Again, quote, our unimpeachable sources have revealed that contrary to the clear requirements on the nomination form for the Asin North by-election, which demands that a candidate in the election must be a registered voter in Asin North, the said Charles Opoku is not a registered voter in the Asin North constituency, he stated. However, this is the rebuttal from the Electoral Commission. They say, for the records, the EC has not received any such request from the MPP to transfer the votes of any person. This allegation is false and a figment of the author's imagination. As usual, it is aimed at maligning the integrity of the Electoral Commission. It says, per Article 94 of the 1992 Constitution, a person does not need to be a registered voter in a particular constituency to enable him or her to contest an election in that constituency. The MPP also issued a statement on this, and it was signed by Richard Ahiangba, the Director of Communications, who stated that it had no parliamentary candidate for Asin North and that the party was yet to hold parliamentary primaries or a primary in that constituency. Any reactions to these two stories?
Well, first of all, the Supreme Court's decision on Justice Quayson, from all indications, I think it was quite clear. Even though people would say the provision that suggests that persons who owe allegiance in terms of citizenship of another country cannot contest in our elections or hold certain positions, people say that provision is quite problematic. I perhaps share that view. But as it stands now, I think the Quayson matter was quite straightforward, because all along the tradition has been that so long as you are a dual citizen, you are not eligible to contest for certain positions and to hold certain positions in our country. The NDC folks who have always defended it I haven't ever heard them say, look, the man had gone through the full process of renunciation and had acquired the certificate or the evidence to prove that he had renounced it. From all, the conversations and the debates, it was about the man having commenced a process and having indicated an intention to renounce his citizenship. And that for me wasn't enough to say the person has therefore renounced his citizenship. Until such a time that the process would have been completed, he remained a dual citizen. And so for me, it was quite a straightforward thing. And I don't know why it took this long for us to get this matter resolved. He certainly, I believe, at the time of filing, hadn't renounced his citizenship, even if the process of doing so had commenced. So for me, I would say that I side with the decision of the Supreme Court, and we look forward to the by-election that will happen in that constituency. And that then relates to the whole hula around somebody's vote being transferred and all. I think the decision to transfer one's vote is a personal decision. If I decide that I want to transfer my vote from the Adentan constituency to Ayawaso West Wogon, and I intend to do so within the parameters of the law, if a particular party is happy about it or not, that really is not their decision to make. It is my right to decide where I would want to transfer my vote to. And if the law permits it, I don't see why it is a problem. If the person that the NDC is complaining about has the right to decide that he wants to transfer his vote to a particular constituency,
right,
and after doing so, he is eligible to contest for a particular political party, so be it. He's a Ghanaian. So I wonder why there will be an issue about why somebody would want to transfer his or her vote to a particular constituency at a particular time. If the person is eligible and really has the higher chances of winning for the MPP and can do so within the law, I don't see why that should be a problem. So whether or not it is true, as the EC has rebutted it and the MPP has also indicated, whether or not that is true, I really don't see the big deal about it.
Let's get into some other stories as we move to other papers. Tidal waves wreak havoc at Shama, and residents of Anglo Beach in the Shama district of the Western region continue to bear the brunt of tidal waves, which have displaced hundreds of people and washed away many houses. Daily Guide gathered that the tidal waves became severe on Sunday after a heavy downpour, leaving many buildings and personal belongings destroyed. The residents have therefore called for urgent steps to be taken to bring some comfort to the affected persons. Suleimana, as you know, the usual, and we would have the rhetoric, and then we'll go back to situation normal, all messed up. But on the international front, Senegal's government suspends mobile internet access amid days of deadly clashes. Conflict may have cost Sudan $3.4 billion. I'm talking about that 7-week conflict in the country. Ghetto kids lose out in Britain's Got Talent final. Many people were rooting for them in the Britain's Got Talent final. They are kids from very impoverished backgrounds, aged between 6 and 13, and they were put together by the one who takes care of them and also the manager of the group, Dauda Kavuma. Unfortunately, they missed out on the top 3 slots for Britain's Got Talent, in which case they would have got some juicy packages. But just to wrap, I want us to look at the story. Nearly 80 schoolgirls poisoned in Afghanistan. And nearly 80 girls have been poisoned and hospitalized in 2 separate attacks at their primary schools in Afghanistan. An official has said it is thought to be the first time such an assault has happened since the Taliban seized power in August 2021 and began a crackdown on the freedoms of Afghan women and girls. Now, girls are banned from education beyond the 6th grade, including university, and women are barred from most jobs and public spaces. The education official said the person who orchestrated the poisoning had a personal grudge but did not elaborate. I usually delve into such stories because I'm very passionate about women's matters. I don't like being called a gender activist, but I am very passionate, whether it's reverse discrimination in education, there's a term for it that just escapes me, or taking taxes off pads so that our women can fare better, to whatever it is. So this struck me, and I found it a bit curious with the Taliban at post. I don't know whether you have any quick reactions before we get into the Finder newspaper.
Well, that's a very, very, very sad development. Of course, we know the philosophy of the Taliban and how devastating it can be. I think the way to go is not really to use the brute force that over the years has been applied. I think what will help is to leverage on building relationships, leverage on what the Arab world can do, what the Islamic world can do, and to continue to dialogue and bring the leadership of the Taliban up to speed with the issues of human rights, the issues of women empowerment, the issues of children's rights and all of that. It will be a long way to go, but we cannot but start. We have to start from somewhere. Over the years, I think a lot of efforts have been made to improve the situation in Afghanistan, but it remains quite challenging. We all have maybe a responsibility in terms of contributing our quota through diplomatic engagements, through all manner of advocacies that can be done through global platforms, to help improve the situation in places like Afghanistan. And of course, as you mentioned, what is happening in Sudan is another sad development, this time on the African continent. And the AU and other institutions really have a role to play. This is the 60th year of the AU. And if you read the visionary statements of the founding fathers when they gathered in Addis Ababa in 1963, you would be sad that we are experiencing this on the continent of Africa. When, for example, Nkrumah and Haile Selassie talked about the need to have a joint African military force that can always intervene. If we did have that, we wouldn't have a situation where, military men and women in a single country divided on two fronts are destroying the country and the future of that great nation. I think the AU, as I've said, really has a lot of on that front. And then back into our own region in Senegal. Senegal has always been West Africa's champion in terms of democracy, in terms of peaceful processes. It's one of the countries that has never experienced coup d'etat before, even as we were doing back-to-back coup d'etats. It's quite sad that a country like that would today be going through what it is going through. As of yesterday, the information is that about 16 people have so far been killed as a result of the ongoing demonstrations. As an organization, my boss is a Senegalese. The board chairman of the Media Foundation is a great woman from Senegal, and she keeps updating us. And I think that all the updates that we are getting is really, really troubling. If the AU has something to do in Sudan, I believe that they certainly also have to intervene in the ongoing crisis in Senegal, but more importantly, our own regional bloc, the ECOWAS. I don't think that ECOWAS should keep, the diplomacy so soft that it get to a point where it will be difficult to redeem. We saw what happened in Guinea,
right?
And we sort of closed our eyes to it until the coup d'etat happened, and then suddenly we imposed sanctions and bans and all of that. I think we can be in the Senegalese situation before it gets out of hand.
Let's take a quick swipe at the Finder newspaper. Oforiatta adds Media General to 10 million Ghana cedi suit. There's Jinapor Ashua's Anglo Gold Ashanti Obuasi Mines of Protection. You remember those people who invaded a portion of the mine in recent times. Galamseyers, to put it that way. Anthrax outbreak. Authorities ban movement of all ruminants in parts of Upper East region. We do know that some cattle that had not been processed for eating had been consumed by some people. They had died and they were consumed by these people. Unfortunately, they contracted anthrax, which can be deadly. Move to sanitize forex market. Bank of Ghana to provide forex liquidity at prevailing market rates. That's according to the IMF. Two stories I want to look at, though. The Oforiatta one, and then Kenyan MP partners Kufuor Foundation to end period poverty. So Kenyan legislator Gloria Owoba is collaborating with the Kufuor Foundation to advocate and champion legislation to end period poverty among girls and women in Ghana. According to her, there is the need to institutionalize menstrual health advocacy, hence the need for a common platform for advocates championing the legislation. Owoba is the Kenyan senator who stood up against period shaming after she was asked to leave parliament because of an apparent blood stain on her trousers. So I'm proud when these things happen, and I'm also glad that she's pushing, not just in her country, Kenya, but here in Ghana as well. But on the Oforiatta issue, the Minister of Finance has amended his lawsuit, including Media General to the suit. Now, what happened? In his amended statement of case filed on Monday, Oforiatta is demanding, among other things, a recovery of the sum of 10 million Ghana cedis as general damages, including aggravated and or exemplary damages for defamation for the libel uttered by a certain Captain Smart. So, quoting Captain Smart on the day on that edition, he says, "Are you aware that Ken Oforiatta has taken his 10% of the IMF money? Quote, every loan we take, he takes 10%. And it is on the back of this that he's being taken on. I think there was a conflation of different matters because, of course, he mentions 10% of the IMF, but there's also been that issue of Kenneth Ofori-Atta's data bank and the services they have rendered in our financial system and the benefits they have got from loans that we have contracted. So I don't know what the head and tail of this is, but I'll leave the courts to do their work. Your quick take?
Well, it's always a sad development for me when media organizations are sued. But of course, we do also have to admit that sometimes there are people who can be very, very reckless on media platforms. Because this matter is in court, I don't want to make particular references to it, but certainly there are times when you hear certain things being said on radio or on television, and you ask yourself, why would people, why would even management or editors allow these things to happen on air? But unfortunately, we are getting to a point where it appears, because in the name of politics, we are throwing the ethics and the professionalism that is required to the dogs. I'm not familiar with the current situation. I think the judges and the court would be the better place to decide this. But I would always urge that persons who feel offended by media actions perhaps should always endeavor to have the NMC as the first line of action. And when the NMC is unable to handle the matter in a satisfactory way, then they can always proceed to the courts. But be as it may be, this is an action that has already been taken, and we cannot comment on it. Otherwise, we find ourselves get ourselves into trouble in the area of contempt. So I leave it as it is, and we see how they deal with it.
We'll see how it pans out. Let's wrap the conversation with these stories. Economy Times, $3 billion ECF, that is Extended Credit Facility, not enough to solve dollar deficit. That's according to the governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Ernest Addison. The governor has admitted that the recent approval of $3 billion in terms of that ECF by the International Monetary Fund would not resolve Ghana's dollar deficit. He said there was the need to strengthen the country's export base and also cut down drastically on imports, adding that this would reduce the pressure on the greenback and also make the country's fiat currency robust. I don't know about the greenback, reducing pressure rather on the greenback, which is the American dollar. I don't know about this portion of the story, but that's what it says. Then, banks' credit to the private sector has shrunk due to tight monetary policy stance, portfolio rebalancing after the domestic debt exchange and moderation in economic activity. That is tied to some credit to private sector, which is shrinking. Let me see whether I'll add anything here. The business analyst says bilateral trade between Italy and Ghana in 2022 yielded 825 million euros, Italian ambassador reveals. Still under 1 billion euros, which for me I think is quite an issue because of certain things I know. But I remember speaking to the Swiss ambassador to Ghana, and I think for them it's in the billions of dollars, partly on the back of gold. Gold is one of our major exports to Switzerland. And then the Hawk newspaper, we don't see this often. Hackman hacked Allen's Edrumiso. That's the story there. Says it's an appeal for sympathy votes. And Haruna's audacious mission in Ashanti flags off 1.5 million votes for Mahama. Let's wrap on these stories, but don't forget what I wanted you to react to from Joy News on Facebook. The gender minister saying that if we want to end streetism, children on the streets begging, mendicants, then we should stop giving alms. Is that the solution? Quick thoughts, and it's a wrap.
Well, in terms of the issues with the city and the Bank of Ghana's governor's comment, sometimes I wonder why the people who have been put there to manage our affairs would be out there telling us what has to be done. That is why we put them there, to do what they think, what they are saying has to be done. So when you have a minister or the governor of the Bank of Ghana or the president telling us our problem is because we are too much import dependent and we have to do this, we have to do that. The problem that I have is, look, that is why we put you there, to do exactly what you are saying we should do. So you don't come and then preach to us what we need to do. You have the power to do that. The Bank of Ghana governor is put there to support the management of the economy and to contribute whatever he thinks is necessary to keep our city stable and to keep our reserves intact, working in collaboration and the Minister of Finance and all of that.
Right.
So his job is not to come and preach to us. He's not in the lecture room. If that is what he wants, he should quit and go to the lecture room to tell students what should be done.
Right.
We put it do the job, and he must do the job. Otherwise, I think he's better off quitting and letting somebody who can do the job to come in. Now, on the gender minister's comment.
So our time has elapsed. So just briefly on that, so we can run.
Absolutely, I don't think. Really, that is the solution. I think it's a matter of she not having something to say. Otherwise, that's really not the solution. The solution is implementing policies that would ensure that the kids are empowered, their families are empowered.
Right.
Not urging people not to give arms.
Well, I concur with you on that. I mean, it could be part of the solution, but a very minuscule part of that solution. The state must live up to expectation. And the Constitution itself, in terms of protecting children and the state and its role, talks about that. We're failing these children. Whether they are from here or not, we have to protect them. But thank you so much, Suleiman Abrahima, for joining us for another morning, another edition of the News Review. We wish you the best, sir.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
He is Executive Director of Media Foundation for West Africa. As we go, I have to remind you, Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic is offering you, if you're a man, free prostate screening. If you're a woman, free fertility screening. Locate them in Accra Spintex, opposite the Shell signboard. They are also in Kumasi, Kronoma, here behind the Angel Educational Complex. There is Takrady Anaji State Tema Community 22. There's Techiman, Hansua, Esiama in Nzema as well. Reach them on these numbers, 0244-867-068 or 0274-234-321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease, bringing us to the end of the news review and the start of sports. Up next, Tuesday.
Good morning. Let's do sports here on the AM show with me, Muftahu Nabila Abdullahi, President of the Ghana Football Association. Ket Okeku says that the football government has been very proactive when it comes to strategies to ensure that there are fans patronizing Ghana football. According to him, the Ghana Football Association wants every single stadium organizing or hosting the Ghana Premier League matches to be filled to capacity.
You would accept the fact that the fan is an important partner of football, for which reason any football association whatsoever, wherever, must be interested in the active consumption of football by the people who love football. And in our country, I want to see all our stadia full on every match day. And I would want to believe that every club owner in the country also wants the same to happen. That's why it's so important for our clubs to engage in a lot of fan-related activities, to ensure that they keep the fans with them, to ensure that they reawaken the passive fans, and to ensure that the very active ones are also kept alive. But in saying this, it's also important for the Football Association to also roll out strategies that will also ensure that the fan is interested in domestic football. And I think that in the last few weeks, your Football Association, our Football Association, has been quite proactive in our own way in getting fans much closer to the sport. I know that we still have a lot more work to do, but collectively, we all have a role to play. And we have to play.
Kato Kureko there speaking. And talking about fans getting to the stadium to throw their weight behind their various teams. Tanobo Fuakwa, they have made a return to the Ghana Premier League for the first time in 16 years. But where would they be playing their football next season? Because the facility which was used to host their Division 1 league matches is not up to the standard required to host Premier League matches. Well, Bono Regional Minister has been calling for support from various stakeholders in the region to ensure that the club is able to play their matches at the Suhuyini Coronation Park. There's more in the following report.
To the Zone 1 slot in the playoff match in Accra. The team was hugely welcomed in Suhuyini, where they presented the trophy to the Tanoso and Suhuyini traditional councils, Bono Regional Minister, the Regional Chief Imam, and the general public. But beyond the qualification is the issue of an acceptable venue to play their home games. The Suhuyini Coronation Park comes to mind, a venue that requires a facelift. Foster Opoku Boache is the Bono Regional Director of Sports Authority.
It is being on record that we need to actually attend to the state of the Coronation Park. There are a whole lot of things that we intend to do. As I speak, the immediate attention that we need is for us to have a new dressing room, and we work on the pitch as well as the inner perimeter. It is an additional responsibility to myself and my team as well as the people of Bono region. But we are trying to put measures in place to ensure that all these things are put so that by the beginning of the season, Bofakwa will play their first match at the Coronation Park.
Bono Regional Minister Justina Osu-Banahini assured the teaming fans of serious steps to help improve the Coronation Park.
Board members and the management, the first point of call.
Together with the board and management members, we will call on the sports minister to come to our aid, having secured the qualification. All 12 members of parliament in the region, whether in opposition or position, will also have to join others to help. While you bring trips of sand, I bring cement. Others donate different items. And then together, we will be moving forward.
In the dressing room, safe zone, perimeter, press center, and a pitch.
We will add all. I had discussions with the sports director before the win, and we will pull resources together as an assembly and the regional coordinating council to do the needful. She also urged the players to continue to show commitment to their work. The work is about commitment and the ability to listen to the advice of your leaders. This is how the Asamoah started. So be patient and committed and tell yourself that you are also working for your community and the country. And with that, we can make progress. Precious Semevo, Joy Sports, Suhuyini.
So what would it take for Tanobo Bofakwa not to get relegated after returning to the top flight? Well, a head coach of the team, Suhuyini Abubakar, the man who supervised that success of securing qualification back to the top flight of Ghana's football after more than a decade and a half, says that the club would have to be financially strong.
Playing Ghana Premier League, you have to be financially sound. If financially you are not sound, it will be difficult. Because I worked with Wonders last season. Because of financially, things went wrong. That's why we went to relegation. So since now I'm with Bofo, I'm pleading with them. If they don't have the means, if they will find someone who will support them, or who will, who will support them and invest, it will help. But if there's no money there, it will be very difficult for us.
But the players you have, do you think they need to add up, or the players you have are good to compete?
Okay, the players, they are good. As my striker is saying, we play against Adriana Stars. They are the league leaders. Bechim, they are among the top. Kotoko, great team. Wonders. Those we played with yesterday, almost 70 to 80% are premier. And we are in our team, 99% haven't tasted the premier before. But if you are in the park, you will see how they perform. So giving them to maintain the core of the team and beef off with only like 2, 3, 4 players, we can make it.
Hussein Abubakar there speaking to Joy Sports. He does not have the qualification to lead the club as his head coach. It means that Tanobu Fakwa will need to get a coach with a CAF license A. But let's move on and talk about the Black Stars now. And they will be coming up against Madagascar on June 18 in their 5th match of the ongoing African Cup of Nations qualifiers 2023. Former captain of the team, Asamoah Gyan, has been speaking to Joy Sports, and he says that Chris Hughton's major challenge in this international window is the fact that many of the players dropped in form, and especially in the latter part of the European season, and he believes that it's going to be a major challenge for the head coach.
Experienced coach, you know, is somebody who is, I think, suitable for the national team. You know, he started well, quite well. He's doing what he had to do. He's a very, very good coach, you know, and everything will depend on him. And a bit worried because this later stages of the league, you know, you saw players from dropping, which is a bit worry, you know. So but when you come to the national team, it's a different thing altogether. It's a different thing altogether, and I'm sure they've played for quite a long time, and then they know how to just do everything together. Everything is okay, but I'm a bit worried about this recent form that our players are having. And as I said, you know, with the national team, it's a different thing. They can come and prove themselves. And when you talk about Chris has done what he had to do. It depends on the players, it depends on the management and the support from Ghanaians to just deliver.
And Asamoah Gyan, his Baby Jet Under-16 tournament kicks off today in Cape Coast. We've had a conversation with him, and we'll be sharing with you what he makes of that competition and why it is important to go down to the grassroots level for the next generation of players of his ilk. Now, two-time boxing now, and the Black Mamas, their head coach, Ofuria Asare, has called for support to ensure that he's able to prepare the team for this year's World Championships and also the next edition of the Africa Games to be staged in Ghana, March next year. He spoke to my colleague, Nathaniel Atto.
Well, I think as for the what I want, I would say I want a lot, numerous.
Like?
I want us to be in camp, preparing for the African Games, especially. And I know the Ghana Olympic Committee are also planning for the camping for the Olympic Games as well, but it's not yet here. Maybe we need to qualify before we can get access to that program. For now, the DBF or the Boxing Federation is doing marvelously well, even though it is not a camping, a residential camping, non-residential camping, but the bosses are more committed and they respond to the training program every day. But the bad side is that they get tired, and some of them will go home. Maybe they may not get a better place to rest or something. You know, those who do boxing in Ghana, you know their background. Sometimes where you live, maybe you are sleeping with a whole lot of people. They cannot give you that kind of freedom to enjoy as it to be like when we are in camping on our own. So I wish we have support in terms of camping so that they can rest, they can eat well, control their food properly, because you know dietary is very, very important in terms of developing their fitness for competition. So we need to control their intake, their food. We need to at least get them some vitamins alongside. We even though we are doing something alongside, sometimes president tries they give out some money, we buy vitamins for them, but we can do more.
We'll have to do more for the Black Bombers to be in good shape to represent the country in major competitions that are coming up later this year.
A sudden sound of pothole symphony. When your vehicle joins the chorus, then be rest assured that a hole will be created in your bank account. Driving on pothole-riddled streets means you have to constantly drift off your lane. From afar, you start looking like a drunk, needlessly turning the steering wheel. If you're wondering why the government is not fixing your potholes, well then, you guessed right. It is because there is no by-election in your constituency.
You've been agitating, demonstrating, crying out to government, and even praying to government to fix your potholes. But there is one man who is praying against that prayer.
If I'm a record, I'm I believe I cried almost 15 years in. I said almost 6 months. Will be a mamma and Timiana, my baby, and I'm a cosa. The bomb prices will to say. I said, and I'm a mayor. Yes, it will be celebrated. You become a person of my baby. I have a person that I have a year. The person bay. I didn't. Obviously, on the be not chop money.
With so much passion fueled by hunger, he sometimes dangerously approaches drivers and sometimes weaves in between vehicles, begging for coins to put food on the table for his family. For 3 years, he has been filling these potholes with soil on the Iran Clinic stretch, not only for the driving comfort of drivers and passengers, but to eke out 11. So would you be happier if God listened to your prayer instead? This crater is starting to take up the whole lane. A few meters away are well carved out potholes, more like asphalt or worry. They cover the entire stretch and you cannot save your car from them. So why not stop there for a game of a worry? Which office do you contact when the street is beyond pothole repair?
MP, why the answer say we road no also on road basame man asame man Zubaga said there be yon na DC Zubaga say yon na president na say some go for we mu aturu say na yegua na Ghana for monwen Ghana for say monwen ah na say ndi obi va duan wo ni ansa wa hu say odada say go for na ma wu kwa no mu what a shock masa adwenwen kwa masa ya je we car we can pay breye so far power ma we mu.
Yes, Ghana's roads can leave you enraged. So like COVID-19, you have to learn to live with it. When it rains, the craters become river wide, suitable for fishing. So I went for a hook and line. And oh, what a great catch it was, right in the middle of the road. So, with all these prospects, why would governments cover them up? Jojo Kobna, Joy News.
Well, thank you very much for staying with us on the AM show. Time now for us to get into our major conversations for the day. We call them big stories, and we're getting into those as we dilate on those very salient matters. So guess what? We have some members of parliament in the studio this morning. They are joining us for these all-important conversations. We have joining the conversation Al-Hassan Suhuyini, and of course, he is Member of Parliament for Tamale North. He joins the conversation. We also have Dr. Dixon Adumaku-Kisi, Member of Parliament for Anya Sobutuom. Both of them join us for this end of the conversation. Gentlemen, a very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Morning. It's good to have both of you. I think the last time I interacted with either one of you was with Al-Hassan Suhuyini. We had this interaction virtually, I remember.
Okay, yes.
You were in there firing salvos towards the studio.
Yeah.
As for Dr. Adumaku-Kisi, it has been 1,000 years since the days of Goliath. So welcome back.
Thank you. Wow.
Gentlemen, so like I usually do.
He's been campaigning. You didn't ask him where he's been.
Oh, we'll be getting into a bit of that. Especially as on the back of your win retention as well in Tamale North. We'll be getting into all of that. But just on the back of time allocations, in order to be fair to all parties and to ensure that we're all on the same page, when I get into your constituencies, which is what I usually start the conversation off with, I would like you to spend a maximum of 2 minutes, if you can. Just walk us through how is, for example, Anya Sobutuom, your roads are a major problem. The rains are here. Sometimes there's this place someone mentioned some time back, a caller. I've forgotten the name of that place. No, there's another. When you mention it, I'll know. No, they say the roads there are. No, it's not. When you mention it, I'll recall. Antieku. I forgot it, but once you Antieku, that was what the caller. Yeah. The person was very passionate about the fact that look, the roads and all of that. So, gentlemen, let's start off the conversation, and then we'll apportion time to ensure that everyone gets a piece of it. I'll start with you, Al-Hassan Suhuyini, and even as you touch on your constituency, you can also tell us what it's been like. Tamale North retaining Al-Hassan Suhuyini. They've had their primaries. He doesn't know his fate yet, but you've had yours.
Let me say good morning to our viewers. Good morning to the very good people of the Tamale North constituency. And once I'm starting on that note, I will want to once again convey my heartfelt gratitude to the people of the Tamale North constituency, the chiefs, the opinion leaders, the imams, and especially the youth and women for their continuous support and prayers. It is the first time since the Fourth Republic that the constituency has allowed a member of parliament to go unopposed, and I don't take it for granted. I feel very humbled by that show of confidence, in the leadership offered in the last 6 years. I couldn't have achieved all that I have achieved, for which reason they have decided to make me go unopposed by myself. I did all of that by the grace of God and with their dedicated support, and I pledge not to take that lightly at all. Only last weekend I was in the constituency. I met with a group of women organizers at Nyanshago, and I was even further inspired by their commitment to, work not only for the development of the party, but their personal development and the constituency in general. These are women who meet every Saturday by themselves. Nobody, has put them together, but they come from all parts of the constituency just to discuss their welfare. And every week when they meet, they contribute at least 50 pesos each. Can you believe that? 50 pesos, 1 cedi. And these are branch women organizers. And they do that just so that they can support each other. They can have conversations about how to improve their welfare and the welfare of their children. I was so inspired, and I just want to commend them, their Secretary Abu and their Magajia and all the people who make it possible for the meetings to take place. I encourage other groups in the constituency to take their example. In the evening of Saturday too, I met with the youth working group of our party that has been put together to help us mobilize towards the 2024 general elections, because it's not going to be an easy task unseating a very incompetent government that is determined to continue to hold us all to ransom. And so we need to begin the work very, very
If they are
quickly.
as incompetent as you say, just to chip in, it shouldn't be such a tough deal, should it?
Well, they are incompetent, but they are committed to, doing everything outside the book to remain in power. And that is why we should not take, their threat to break the eight lightly. And
right.
In Tamale North constituency, we do not intend to do that. In fact, you spoke of roads, and it is one of the biggest...
So now we're getting into what we can appreciate from the Tamale North constituency.
Yes. I mean, it's one of the biggest problems in the constituency. I mean, if you take the stretch from full end of the road to Kula, and even beyond Kula, you have the road deteriorating, to levels that are just unacceptable. This was a road that was awarded to a contractor in 2016. The contractor moved to site and started work. But when this government came into office, they suspended all road contracts, you remember, and said they were carrying out a review. They never finished that review until 2020, somewhere in 2020, when they brought a new contractor on site who only, did some few drains, and after the elections has also, abandoned that stretch. Only a couple of months ago, it was so bad that I had to get a grader to put it in shape for use by motorists. And this road is critical to the whole of Tamale, because it is the only area where you have the dumping site, the refuse dump, and so all garbage that is collected within the Tamale metropolis uses that road to dump this refuse, and yet it is left unattended to. And I have seen a contract between the Tamale Metropolitan Assembly and Zoom Lion Company that manages this refuse dump, and a portion of the contract suggests that some monies will be made available for yearly rehabilitation of that road, but that money is never put to the rehabilitation of that road. And I have raised this a number of times. And even beyond that road, if you go into our communities like Kamvli, like Ward K, if you go to Chogu, I mean, there are no roads to begin with. And where they are, they are left unattended, and they have become gullies and drains. And when it rains, people are worried about the devastation that floods can cause. So it is a general problem in this country, and there's a need for the government. I don't know if they have the capacity now, after wasting so much money on very needless things, to fix those roads. And that is the reason why we need to rescue this country and put it back to work.
For you, Dr. Adomaku Kisi, what's the state of your constituency? And maybe since he's spoken about his retention, what are your prospects for Anya Sowutu going into that parliamentary primary? When they take place, what would be your expectations?
Well, let me also take the opportunity to say good morning to Anya Sowutu constituency. And let me admit, just as Suhuyini has, that roads are a big deal. And I really think that within the last couple of years, I think if any of us even thought roads were not necessary, Kumewu has made it very clear to us that votes or elections, when it comes to roads, are still very, very relevant. If you look at what really transpired just recently, I have come to a realization that the powers that be are fully aware that roads matter when it comes to elections. And I think that, I hope that in the future, maybe resources might be also looked at in terms of the population. Because I always make my case that 1 kilometer in my constituency will be seen by more people than 1 kilometer in other constituencies in terms of the population that I have. But
what's your population again? How many hundreds?
324,000.
324,000. That's massive.
It's huge. It's huge. And it makes Kumehu look like, one electoral area in my constituency. But the key thing is that I'll use this to mention about 6 critical roads that I have issues with in my constituency. And I'll start from, in no particular order. Agape is one. Palace Town, Anya to Gonze is another road. Very critical. And then we have Fan Milk that a lot of people call me about. And then Antieku, which of course you've mentioned. But fortunately, parts of Antieku is being fixed now. And I'm hoping that one main drain that we're hoping to work on will be done to ease the issues with the Antieku road. And then we have Odogono Senior High School to Blue Kios, another major place in Awoshi. And then Onyinase, oh my goodness, that connects to Gbawe. And if it is done, I think it could even reduce some of the congestion we have at Malam, because people can enter Gbawe through that path and not necessarily use the main road. Besides that, we also have Lobnava area, which is also screaming for roads close to Israel Police Station. And then to name another key place is the Alaji Enclave, which is in Chantai. So these are very crucial or critical things that Anya Sotom is bleeding for. And I've always thought that maybe in the future, all MPs should be road minister for like some 3 months so that you can really put in that.
I guess in those 3 months they would focus on their constituencies, like every road would be done.
What are you suggesting? That the current road minister has fixed his roads?
Oh no, I'm just saying that, in
his constituency. Is that what you're
asking? No matter what you do, once you're road minister, you have some leverage to up the roads.
But that's not playing fair.
That's why I said every 3 months. I didn't say the entire,
Or maybe there should be a cyclical way of having members of parliament. No, wait. So maybe there should be a by-election in every constituency every now and then. Then maybe you saw what happened overnight in Kumehu. So when it's your by-election time, the roads will be done.
I think there should be a model. I know there is a model that determines the priority of roads, but sometimes it is not followed because of political expediency. Yes, and I think that is what we all have to guard against, because sometimes when you speak to the technocrats, they tell you about road leading to farming communities, to markets, to hospitals. These are this is the model that is used to determine the priority of the roads. But sometimes it is at the whims and caprices of the people in charge.
And I really think that maybe, moving forward from a developmental standpoint, we need to divorce ourselves from the political or politicization of roads, maybe. And then
when will we get there? We keep saying when we come on air, we like saying all these nice things, both sides, but it appears we never get to the point of
that. I don't believe that
divorcing our personal.
I don't think development can be depoliticized. I think
not wholly depoliticized, but the point you made about a framework. If there's a framework, why not follow the framework?
Yes, so that's the and
you can do more if you satisfy the basics in that framework for a particular place, and you do more elsewhere. No one has a problem because you stuck to.
Politics can ensure that the framework is followed, and politics can also ensure that it is abused. And what we have currently is the abuse. So I don't believe in depoliticization of development. I think development gets better when it is politicized.
Properly, maybe we should say properly politicized.
Rather than because I think that in some other jurisdictions there's an agreed upon template. And that is devoid of, party politics. And I can cite many places where, there's a firm agreement on certain things. One or two can be politicized. I agree. Whether the Democrats are doing a lot more infrastructure or not.
Exactly.
That angle. But the core work doesn't really, get swung in those directions. And I really think that, to a large extent, Ghanaians in general, we need to wake up to doing more property tax payment, so that government can, in simple terms, generate the revenue required to be able to attend to these things. And I'm also of the view, and hear me out, in other places, all cell phones, that are in a certain area, that tax goes to that area, and if, for instance, looking at my population, if all the cell phones that are registered to Anyaso Tum, the premiums that they are paying, this e-levy, is to be used for that local area, you can imagine, then they will have a huge basket from which to benefit in terms of, road improvement and things like that. So in the US, your zip code, which is like your aerial code, is tied to your cell phone. If you're in Bethesda, you're paying different rates. If you're in, another part of Virginia, you're paying different rates. If you're in Maryland, so that you are paying, and it's going towards
according
the local
to
area.
Right.
And these are other things that our governance system should look at. Right. Because I think that, considering my population, if every e-levy paid, a fraction of it was really to go towards local development, I think I would have, really moved up compared to, where it is evenly distributed. And I've always also been of the case that, this idea of all members of parliament having the same kitty, amount is
You mean the common fund? Right, of course, because they have your constituencies that are the likes of Bantama, there are the likes of Ketu North, Ketu South, and then there are the smaller Ashaiman.
Yes.
That's a typical example in Accra.
Ashaiman. Greater Accra region, very small. And if we
so you mentioned Kumo, which may have a voter population of about 17,000 thereabouts, versus your voter population.
So that is one of the aspects, and I always say that whatever noise level you're getting at a smaller constituency, mine is 10 times, and I shouldn't be given the same, chest to play with.
Point made on.
But I don't know if you have time, but you see, the bad side of all of this is that at the end of it all is the MPs who suffer the brunt of the people.
Yeah, you'll be the casualty.
Yes,
your head is on the chopping
I have
block.
said that mostly MPs suffer the brunt of government failure first. And I've even made the argument that it is the reason why the NPP lost, many constituencies in the last election. Because the people, when they don't see development in their communities, when they don't see roads being done, the people to hold responsible first are usually their members of parliament. Unfortunately so. But
maybe not so unfortunately, because you also put yourselves forward as agents of development and all of that.
Yes. So
that conversation we can have.
But you see what we are doing.
In fact, just to intervene.
Yes.
What I was going to ask next, and I hope both of you can very briefly address that. I'm asking myself, do we need guidelines per the law or something? Where are we going to draw the line and say, look, the person you're going to vote for as a member of parliament is not going to bring you roads. In fact, that person is not responsible for bringing you roads. Yeah. There are local groups like your DCE, who is like president in your district, or your MCE, who is like president in your municipality, and others who are supposed to bring you this. When it comes to that, actually, it's not the MP. I don't know, but aren't you guys tired of the handouts and all of that and the requirements? And I'm sure you are. Aren't you looking forward to something like that?
That's where I was going to go with the argument that I began with, that all of this is as a result of the failure of local government. The idea behind how local government was supposed to work has failed. And that is why, you have a situation where MPs bear the brunt when, some of these critical development is not extended, to the people. And that's why I disagree when my brother says that the common fund should be shared based on the size of the local assembly, because the thinking was that the bigger your local assembly, the more the more resources and revenue you are able to raise. And so if that has failed, it should not be corrected by using the common fund, it should be fixed.
That one,
it should be fixed. And that's why I like your suggestion relating to payment of e-levy and people living within that area and a chunk of that going into the development. So in that case, the smaller constituency will have less revenue from that. And that is why the common fund, which is supposed to be uniform, then comes to provide equity. So that's the only point of disagreement I have with you. Okay. But on the question of how we can move away from this, I think that from the situation where people expect these critical development to come from the MPs, I think, again, I will make the point that we need to ensure that we fix what is wrong with our local governance system, because that's where the solution is. Right. And part of it, in my view, is to get district chief executives elected. I have always said that when we get to that point where people put themselves up, for election as DCEs, the education will be done through the campaign that they will do. And people will get to realize the potential of the assembly to construct roads and do drains and ensure that flooding is prevented. And they will choose people to become their local president, so to speak, based on their capacity to deliver this critical development. And then at that time, I'm sure that members of parliament will now be free to some extent to focus on legislation.
Right. On that same point, Dr. Adumakukisi.
Well, I think that certainly if municipal leadership is elected, and let me cite that in the Americas, a lot of appointed people are actually elected. More so than what we have here. Even up to the courts, even up the Supreme Court itself, even up to the police commanders. Yeah.
Yes, that's true.
Yes.
And even who becomes
superintendent for fire
in the court system, the district attorney, all those, to the highest level.
And it makes you compete, to the extent that you cannot say that, if people's cases are not being prosecuted in a good timely manner, most of the judges don't mind at all. Yeah. You understand? But if you're going to be up for another re-election or reconsideration, then you'd make sure that whatever cases that come to you are completed or seen through and attended to, and that you have appropriate reporting done. So I really think that, when there's competition, efficiency, productivity increases. That is just the norm. But if all jobs are such that you get appointed and you answer to just the person that appoints you, then that is where
that's where the handicap is.
But I also think that oversight responsibility, and that comes to all of us. If oversight works well, then we can literally query like local governance and say, how come that these people have been deprived X amount? If 100K is going towards one municipal and 10K has gone to, then we can query. Yeah. And that also comes with the oversight duties. Imagine if road minister comes and he sits in front of us and realize that, hey, this district got X amount more than the other district. Why? And then he has to answer. If he doesn't have a very good reason for that, logical reason, then we say that, hey, my man, you have to go because you've as it is, not been fair in your distribution of the resources.
So point made. We have quite a way to go when it comes to resolving some of these problems. But at the district level, the local level as well, there's a lot more that we ought to be doing. Once you enhance the capacity of the local level, it has a bottom-up effect. Unfortunately, we've had our own systems. I don't know whether it's time to revisit those issues in the 1992 Constitution of Ghana. But let's get into some economics-related matters. We know that the first tranche of the IMF cash, $600 million, hit the central bank's accounts, and since then there have also been some talks in respect of the World Bank and some sums of money they're going to be giving us for developmental purposes, some of them related to flooding. But some things that stand out. Apart from the $600 million that we've received, you would think that the expectation was that it would stabilize the cedi to a large extent. That has not happened. In fact, just about over a week ago, the cedi was selling, in fact, the dollar was selling at a little over 12 cedis It has fallen a bit from the last time I checked. It fell to around 10.97, and I think it's been fluctuating. You get it. So in that regard, the business community is still complaining. The cost of items is still rather high. Inflation is still biting here and there. In terms of expectations when it comes to the IMF money, we knew it wasn't going to solve our problems. But in terms of the short to medium term effects, have you seen that? I'll start with you, Al-Hassan.
Well, I'm not particularly surprised. I think that the expectations were a bit too high from some quarters.
From which quarters? Government quarters?
From government quarters, especially. They thought that they spoke like they did during the passage of the e-levy, as if a deal with the IMF, like the passage of the e-levy, was the holy grail. It was going to be the solution to the economic crisis that we were going through. The president, the president later came in his address to admit that, look, guys, this is not going to solve our problem. And we in the opposition said it repeatedly, even before the deal was signed, that, look, only in 2022, last year, the Bank of Ghana, broke all the rules and extended to government over $3 billion. By printing about 44 billion plus Ghana cedis for the government. And if that didn't do anything, like we say, it's not unconfirmed. It's, in fact, the Bank of Ghana, through their own releases, have admitted and rather, describe it as overdrafts. And it's only in Ghana that you'll have overdrafts running into over 18 months. So I'm saying that's why I said they broke all the rules. And the IMF team, in their report, has actually, condemned this practice. And so it's not unconfirmed. But I'm saying that if you had that, like we say in Dagbani, if you walk through the rain and you do not get wet, a bucket of water poured on you will not make any difference. I mean, if you had 3 billion, in 1 year, and it did not make any impact, you didn't expect $600 million and I think 300 or so by the end of the year to make any significant impact. I mean, our problem is deep-seated, and that is why sometimes I feel that the government should be honest with the people more. It is true that honest.
But the president has said that we're in dire straits. The president has said, in fact, in his last COVID-19 address, the 29th one, he admitted that this isn't where he would have wanted, things to get to. That indeed they did not want to go back to the IMF, but their hands were tied.
The government is admitting, the president and his government are admitting to the dire straits because it is obvious. What is not obvious is what they are not admitting to. It is not, and the depth of the problem is not obvious, and how we got here is not obvious. And if they say that when you fall, you do not concentrate on where you have fallen, you look at where you tripped. So if we get to understand how we got to where we are, then we will understand the enormity of work that is required for us to get out of the mess that we find ourselves. But the government is only admitting to the obvious. The fact that you and I are going through economic challenges cannot be denied by anybody. And that is why they are compelled to make that admission. But what they are not admitting to is the fact that this decay began long before COVID and the Russian-Ukraine war. This decay, and it has also even been confirmed by the IMF, that the decay began before the Russian and Ukraine war. It only exacerbated, the situation. But if we do not make that admission and get a buy-in, that is why it is still not even too late for the government to have, a national, a conference of a sort where we will bring all stakeholders together to assess the level of damage that we have done to the economy and how we can get out of it, because
something like the PDRC,
something like the Senchi kind of thing. Yes, it is critical that you have everybody appreciating how we got here, Because that appreciation is what will lead to everybody understanding the contribution he or she has to make for us to get out of this place. But you speak to people even in government, you know, key sector ministers, some of them cabinet ministers, and they themselves do not even know what is happening. They do not know how things got this bad and what is being done to get out of the situation. It is as if the decisions are left to a select few in government. And that is worrying.
Speaking of a select few, let me just find out though. I mean, fuel prices are also becoming a little, they're inching up again. I was really looking forward to, I mean, realistically, it won't solve our problems, but you are hoping that the dollar to CD performance will get much better because look, if you're paying any kinds of fees in foreign currency, or if you're, and a friend of mine had to do that for a year, it was torture.
Yeah.
Great British pounds. Yeah. She just ended her dental, you know, work in March. So you can imagine what that.
A friend called me from the
£700 a month.
You know, Hajj, people are preparing to go for Hajj and they are in search of foreign currency. A friend called me yesterday from Tamale. All the places they went to, they couldn't get the dollar below 13 Ghana cedis for $1. You know, but were they going to
Forex Bureau?
All the places they went to.
Streets.
Of course, the Forex bureaus are licensed to operate, you know. So if they went to the Forex Bureau, how many people can actually walk to the Bank of Ghana and get Forex? Yeah, I mean,
I'm not talking about.
Yeah, it's the Forex Bureau and the Forex Bureau, and everywhere they went to, it was not less than 13 Ghana cedis, and those are some of the things that you are faced with as a member of parliament. So then you are called to see what you can do. What can you do with that situation?
Yeah, I was actually curious. What are you able to? But unless you're trading Forex,
that's the problem that we are faced with. I mean, so the situation is not getting better with this $600 million, and I don't expect it to get better.
It has stabilized a few things, though. What we are not seeing is that real impact on our currency and the cost of items. Basically, that is it. We do not know whether when the second tranche comes in, which is at the latter end of the year, by which time the brunt will still have been felt by a lot. But even as you talk about the economy, the realities of it, there's that renewed push. Ken Ofori-Atta, do you recall? That he had to go. The IMF deal has been secured. There's no, in fact, recently I heard a little boom about it and I said, oh, it's not dead, is it? What's your take on that?
So let me start out with one key thing. The basics of economy management hasn't changed.
Right.
And I don't know when the NDC would wake up to some realities, because Suhuyini here has repeated that we don't know how we got here. But I really think that, you know, B. Mali says it nicely. You know, you have to know your past to know where you're going. And in very simple terms, I can say on authority that we know how we got here, to a large extent. And to be very fair to Ghanaians, the truth is that we've embarked on very bold and audacious projects in this country, never before seen. I can cite the likes of, you know, interchanges. I can cite the likes of hospitals, and let me also state one thing, that if you go to Komfanochi today, the maternity block that is being built is a huge thing. It's by itself, by all standards, a hospital on its own. And other people in this country think that if you're adding on to an existing infrastructure, then you're not doing much. But I beg to differ. If you go to Kolebu, the urology center that is being built is a huge investment. And although it is happening at Kolebu, where we all know what Kolebu stands for and where Kolebu has been all through the years, you cannot discount the fact that a major project is happening on the soils of Kolebu. When you go to the likes of Adesadel, when you go to the likes of Presec, when you go to Rosec, Wesley Girls, infrastructure has been added, and you cannot discount it. If you go to the STEM schools that have been built, it is a mind-blowing infrastructure. And these are very costly. And when we say we don't know how we got here, in terms of the loans that you and I have signed in Parliament, because government cannot spend any money without it going through Parliament to a large extent. I mean, and I really think that members of Parliament have to, come to terms with the fact that every major project in this country has been read through, debated, discussed in Parliament, either the Finance Committee or in the, we all, agree. The last major one is this road leading to Nsawam, which you and I are privy to. When the loan agreement came, we all signed for it. So I really would beg that, those realities are put to the Ghanaian people so that we all come to terms with the fact that, listen, when all these projects were discussed and debated, all of Ghana saw it. And it's not like it was done in the dark. Now, the other thing is that where we are in terms of COVID, which some people don't think COVID was adverse, in terms of Russia, Ukraine, which some people don't think is existent, I can say...
I don't think anyone thinks it's non-existent. It's the extent to which we can hold on to them and claim they have buffeted our economy to the point where we are. That's the concern.
But as you can see, I've made mention of numerous projects that we've done. I mean, for my constituency as we speak, this is the first time we are going to enjoy this district hospital, the Agenda 111. And this is the biggest investment government has made in my constituency.
What's the progress on that, though?
I mean, per what the municipal chief executive was telling me the other day, we're above 50% of the work. And that is...
Have you seen the project?
Oh, yes. I have pictures.
Where exactly is it in your...
This is actually right close to the municipal, and it's at Antieku, more towards Anya. And fascinating. And
one of these days we'll be coming there with our cameras.
Come and see. And for me, I appreciate the fact that, if not at all, some portions of the cake has come to my constituency. Now, we should all not discount the fact that Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo took on very big projects. Very big projects. And that has contributed to these issues. Now, when you talk of roads, it may not be so obvious to some people, but I can cite a few that I have seen. I mean, I really am so happy when I'm going to the Eastern Corridor now.
Right.
In terms of the dual roads from Ntawam up to Apedra. Fantastic. It brings me such relief when I'm driving. And I'm happy that it has been proven now that accidents have even reduced, although there are accidents on that road, just by the fact that you don't overtake, and meet an incoming car. So these are positives that we should not discount. Now, the amount that has come is a drop. And if Ghana really wants to take something serious, I think that importation of certain things like orange juice, which we all can, have done in this country, ought to be looked at. There are a myriad of things that, as a country, toothpick, that if we want to be very deliberate in our intention, in terms of cutting down our dependence on imports, then we'll really be working on this dollar exchange. Because in very simple terms, the strength of the city depends on how much we move outside this country, more so than what comes in. And I think that we all have to curb our appetite for foreign, items. And one beautiful thing Russia has done, even now,
right,
that they are at war, they have substituted a lot of things that they were importing for local items. And this substitution of, for instance, sugar that would have imported for maybe sugar made in this country, and a host of things would lead the way. And I would always commend Nigeria for what they've done with rice, And if you look at the chunk of rice we import in this country, and then we claim that we are really, trying to cut down on our exchange rates, then we must strengthen our agricultural sector so that nobody, and I mean nobody, will be importing tomato paste, nobody will be importing tomato sauce. A chunk of our money is spent on this. Every wachi joint in this country is contributing literally to our forex.
Right.
And
I mean, these are things that when the president spoke about import substitution and all of that, or when we're on the ropes, and we still are on the ropes, it makes no sense that we import so much when it comes. At least I know for rice, there is that collaboration that is ongoing. I don't think it is the solution by and large. You look at the Nigerian example; it was radical. And if you look at the falls, I've done one of my blunt thoughts on that. If you look at the fall, within a year of consumption of foreign rice to local rice, it's not something, it's not rocket science. And this is Nigeria. They are next door neighbors. It can be done. But on the back of our economic woes, there's also that renewed push when it comes to Ken Ofori-Atta.
Yes,
Very quickly on that. Let me bring in Al-Hassan Suhuyini, because I also want his take on on that specific
talk on that one.
Yes. So I will address that. But when I heard my brother talking about big infrastructure, I was just thinking to myself. I mean, in the health sector, for example, is there any infrastructure that is completed and put to use bigger than the UGMC, bigger than the Ridge Hospital in this country, bigger than the Tamale?
But I think he also made a point
bigger than the Upper East Regional Hospital.
The fact that
I'm talking, I'm still counting. I'm still counting. I said the Upper East Regional Hospital.
Urology.
Can I finish? Can I finish?
Bigger than Ridge.
Can I finish?
Let me make you aware.
Can I finish?
That if you go to Kolebu now, the urology building is bigger than Ridge.
All right. So let him. Please let him make
the maternity building,
please,
bigger than Ridge.
Please, I'll address that. I'm saying that. Is there any project in the health sector that they have done bigger than all these that I have mentioned, from the Upper East Regional Hospital to the Tamale Teaching Hospital to the Ridge Hospital to the UGMC and all of it? Have they done that? And in the roads and highway sector, is there a project bigger than the T3, than the whole airport, than the Kumasi airport, than the Tamale airport? Have they done any projects in the highway sector bigger than these? If you are talking about education, the e-blogs are there for you to see. And yet, the interesting thing is how much was used to do that? How much came to government around that time that these ambitious projects were undertaken? And yet, even as that government embarked on these projects with little resources, our economy was not in this dire straits. That's what you need to remember. To whom much is given, much is expected. And you are talking about a government that inherited 2 additional oil wells that were put, that were put together by the previous government for them, making 3 wells from which they got their revenue from. You're talking about expansion of the port.
On that aspect, we can always talk about the fact that, when post the Kufuor administration, when the NDC came into power, you came and benefited from, in 2010, from the oil bit.
That's not a comparison I'm making. That's not a comparison I'm making.
I'm merely saying that as we go on, there are more benefits that can come.
Yes, I am not comparing. Good. That's the point. I'm not comparing the Mahama Mills regime to the Kufuor regime. That's not what I'm doing. I'm comparing the Mahama Mills regime to the Nana Akufo-Addo regime. And I'm saying that under the Mills Mahama regime, they inherited, oil fine from the Kufuor regime, which they put to use. Can I finish? Which they put to use. One well they put to use and did all these ambitious projects that they did and has been put to use by the people of Ghana. Now you have 3 wells, so you should expect more. And when you get them more, your economy shouldn't be in these dire straits. Yet we have a situation where we don't have them more, and yet our economy is in this mess. And so when I hear him talk about they have embarked on all these, I'm wondering, where are they compared to the previous and compared to the resources that were used to do that and compared to the health of the economy at the time, even when the government of the day did that. But the point about
10
that's a lie.
UGMS.
Forgive me. That's a lie. We know the budget. No, check the budget. We know how much is spent on free SHS. That's a lie.
You know how many
we're spending? So please, we're spending a few billion.
Please, don't even go there. Don't even go there. Don't go there.
Or you not admit
don't go there.
Would have built you another Ridge.
So
you would not admit to that.
So let's talk about the fact that even you agree that the economy has been so mismanaged by the man in charge of the economy.
Let's talk about the man in charge.
That's what I'm going to.
That's the point.
That's what I'm saying. Can you let me finish the sentence?
That when you're done, I don't know why you ran away from Ken Ofori-Atta and threw it to him. I'll come back to you.
I ran away. I haven't run away.
You parried it to him. I want to find out what the stance of the majority is. So when he's done, I'll come back to you.
I'm saying that all this argument is needless because even they agree with us, the common people and opposition, that the man who has managed our economy has done such a bad job that they want him changed. They agree. It is just that they have lost
the agree to. You know that.
What else? What were their reasons?
They say
what
that
were their reasons?
He is not good for the optics. He's been labeled. He's been branded. There's so much that has happened, and that is not necessarily because he was reckless. You remember the parliamentary committee sitting, and it's not that he's been reckless, but he's been tagged in a certain light, and so let someone else come and take over. That's their stance. They don't agree that they've been reckless. They don't agree.
I mean, so that is part of the problem. And that's why I said in our first conversation, in my first submission, that there's a need for the government to be honest about how we got here, and together we can all appreciate the roles we have to play to get out.
Right.
Because you cannot have credit to ABA, water in your mouth, and be blowing to rekindle fire. You cannot say the man is so good and has done such a fantastic job, but because he contradicted himself on IMF, he must go. What logic? How reasonable is such a call? When the man is so good and has done such a fantastic job, you want him change just because he said we won't go to IMF and we have gone to IMF.
But
nobody's going to buy that. So the truth that they are running away from is that they feel the pinch of the recklessness and the mismanagement. Their constituents are attacking them because things are not working. And that is why they were compelled to agree with us and to demand that the president should change him. Unfortunately, the president, like he does even to everyone, that's how he became president in the first place, tricked them.
Have you been tricked?
No.
Are you still looking forward to ousting Ken Ofori-Atta?
Listen, I think
you say you've not been tricked.
Let me be very clear here. The majority we had our meeting with the president, and the arrangement was that he would review the decision about Ken going or not when the IMF deal is concluded. And as it stands, I think that Suhuyini has to admit to the fact that we are parliamentarians, and our duty is to make a case to the full extent possible. And I think that if he'll be fair, to the extent that even with the party in power, the majority leadership and members made their case. And I think the final decision rests in the bosom of the president. And
you made your case, but when you had the opportunity to put, maybe not pen to paper, but to put that commitment, bring it to bear, you chickened out.
No, the path was different. And I must be very clear here. We agreed that it was necessary that he goes, but the path they chose was not...
Which goes back to what I was saying. Fine.
Yes. So it's not that we chickened out.
No.
And he has to agree to the terms that we said that the justifications you were given were not in sync with ours. Ours were very key that, listen, there's a man that didn't want us to go to IMF. The president had to actually make a case for it. And in that sense, we felt that there are two key things we said: credibility, and confidence of the Ghanaian people had waned. And in finance, when you lose those two things, it's difficult. Those were our claim, not all the things that the NDC were making. So the argument was very simple, that we felt that credibility and confidence were low. And that was it. And beyond that, as it stands now, I think that, listen,
how do you lose the two in managing an economy?
In all fairness, I think that as it stands now, members of parliament, we've made our case.
How do you
lose
confidence and
the power is in the appointing
when you are managing
authority?
An economy?
Please let him...
It's
really,
all right.
I don't get it.
The power is in the appointing authority. And as it stands now...
So you feel as legislators on the majority side, you've done what ought to be done?
To the full extent.
to the full extent.
And the thing is, we have a country to keep afloat. We are legislative.
Can the economy only be kept afloat with Ken Ofori-Atta? I mean,
Not necessarily.
You have the men, remember?
Not necessarily.
You have the men.
I agree with you.
Area boys.
There are many people.
You say they are what?
Area boys.
Who can, as it is, And the other thing too is that, in reading Black Swan, a book, sometimes we give too much credit, or we put a lot of blame on somebody when there's a cataclysmic issue, the likes of a tsunami, that then takes off, and we fail to recognize that even if whoever had the Holy Grail was seated in Ken Ofori-Atta's seat, with the
circumstances,
if the authority on finance in the world, people in the likes of John Stigler and others were in that seat, the same thing would have happened.
You're saying that even if the likes of, and I'm just bringing this in on the lighter note, Professor Steve Hank of the Johns Hopkins, who has been on the back of this administration, even if he had been opposed,
so there's that argument.
Any different.
There's the argument. So,
okay, all right.
So I really think that, we have to weigh all of these things. But like I said, in summary, that the onus is on the president to make that decision.
Do you want, the majority side, from where we are, do you want, Mr. President, to still go ahead and find a replacement for Ken Ofori-Atta? Are you still going to push for that?
I think that this is one of the things that we haven't had a meeting again about this. I mean, in all fairness, and I cannot talk for the...
What's your personal stance?
My personal stance is that I think that there was an arrangement, and the onus is on the president to make a decision.
So to stick to the arrangement and go ahead with ousting Ken Ofori-Atta?
No, the arrangement was that, when the IMF is done, we'll have...
Exactly, it comes back to the same thing.
Yeah, so as it stands now, I think that, if some things have changed, maybe he can brief us. If some things have changed.
Doc,
yeah.
Should Ken Ofori-Atta go? This was the deal. The deal was he sees us through the IMF deal. Yeah. We've got the deal. Is it time for him to go?
I wouldn't say yes to that.
No.
I think
I thought you just said that the president should stick to the plan. That was the plan.
Listen to me.
That was why you agreed to the president.
Listen to me carefully. I think that the final decision rests in the president's bosom.
I will advise the president not to let
As it stands now, if there's something new, he can let us know.
All right. Yeah. I would like us to get into other matters, but very quickly on the economy. There's another matter that has come up that also borders on the supposed recklessness of your party, which has also impacted their administration. There's always that banter, but in recent times, the World Bank country director, Pierre Laporte, has said that the IPP agreements signed under John Dramani Mahama were terrible for our economy. And Dr. Kwabena Donkor, who was then power minister, has come out to roundly debunk that, saying that it is bereft of the facts and all of that. But this is the claim that no mean an entity, the World Bank, is pointing to. How do you respond to that? Because they would often tell you that, look, it's also on the back of some of your recklessness from the past that they are dealing with this situation, the NPP. Very quick thoughts on that. I want us to...
Yeah, the World Bank depends on information that is presented to it by a government. And so, as much as I will not fault the World Bank country director for his mispronouncements on this matter, I will expect that he will go beyond the information that is provided by the government to get himself more educated on the subject before he makes any public pronouncements again. Because, look, the country faced energy challenges during the NDC regime. And these were energy challenges that the NDC did not create, but inherited. That fact has to be established.
With oil fields.
Yes, it inherited, because the experts at the time, in fact, predicted long before the time that because of the low level of investment in the sector, we're going to get to that point where we'll have a crisis. Previous governments didn't do anything about it, and so we got to the crisis when the NDC was in power. The president then who I respect so much because of the way he even approached this issue, identified the 3 problems together with the experts. 1, there was the financial problem. 2, there was the fuel problem. And 3, there was the generation problem. So he set out to fix the generation problem.
Generational capacity.
The generation problem through the emergency power, plants that were brought in. And you do know that in negotiating agreements in an emergency situation, it is sometimes not the best time to negotiate, an agreement. So definitely, one will ask himself, could we have gotten better if we were not in an emergency? And I will say yes. If you are not in an emergency,
very key point,
you will get better. So we had those, arrangements in an emergency situation. But the fact, however, is that those arrangements ensured that we got out of the energy crisis that we find ourselves in. Then the financial problem was fixed with the introduction of, ESLA, the ESLA fund. Now, the World Bank Country Director needs to educate himself more on what the intention of ESLA was and whether that has been applied.
Right.
If that was applied, would we be where we are today? If the World Bank Country Director educates himself on that, I'm sure he will be able to appreciate the issues better. The fuel problem was solved with the fast tracking of the Ghana Gas Infrastructure Project. Right. Which ensured that we now had our own fuel in this country. But I will just want to reiterate the point that Dr. Kobna Donkor makes. And it has to do with the fact that even as we speak, Ameri, which was even negotiated under an emergency situation, is the lowest in terms of, thermal generation tariffs. How much we pay for thermal generation in this country. It is even lower than Asogli that came in long before, the power crisis. So what the World Bank Country Director said is not borne by the facts. And what I am tempted to agree with is the analysis of Kobna Donkor, who says that at the time that you negotiated to pay, say, $4, to pay $1 for, a unit of power, the dollar was 4 cedis. Today, that same dollar is about 11 to 12 cedis. And so if that, and then the bigger problem is that you have misapplied the tax handle that was supposed to help you deal with some of these problems. And so here is the case, your budget has increased as a result of your reckless management of the economy. That has because it's reckless. That has led to the depreciation of your cedi, and it is part of the recklessness that led us to collateralizing the ESLA proceeds, for example. So clearly, I think that the World Bank Country Director was speaking based on information provided by the government, and I think he should go beyond just the government of the day's information and better educate himself.
Just to cap off, though, I'm not going to elicit any answers on this, but we heard Mr. President say that we were in dire straits. Of course, we needed the IMF bid. And then all of a sudden, we also heard, and on the back of this, we'll now be able to go to the back to the capital markets and all of that. That was, I don't know where that was coming from, but I think we've had a conversation on that, so it should be fine. But let's talk governance as we, in the next 15 or so minutes, we cap off on the conversation. We have and I would like to go back to this, and hopefully we don't have to walk that road again, the Domelevo situation. I will not belabor it. What is your candid reaction to what has happened? And we'll take a swipe at a few other issues when it comes to governance. But I'll start with you, Doc.
So which one did you want me to touch on?
Domelevo.
Well, in hindsight, I think it was a low point in governance. I mean, and I think that I would side with the Supreme Court justices in terms of this decision. And for lack of a better word, I think that he will have some compensation for this, and Ghana will lose some money in terms of the compensation that Domelevo will get.
And in terms of obviously what we could have got from him if he had been at post.
Well,
everything that has happened.
I would agree with you. So as it stands, governance is also a learning institution, and I'm sure that with this, this mistake will not be repeated by any other government, other measures will be put in place in terms of the checks and balances before any official in that capacity is allowed to go on, let me say, leave indefinite. But be it as it may, I also think that in this case, the NDC, can admit to the fact that the justices are very fair-minded, because they've shown to be fair-minded, and if even they had doubts, which sometimes they do, this is one classic case that I would always cite as proof that the justices are not necessarily just doing what government.
So I see where you're going. In other words, there have been a string of decisions that have seemed to go against his party, the NDC.
Yes,
and you're basically saying that with this is you could say Domelevo was brought in at the twilight of Mahama's administration, but we've seen same from the MPP into the NDC administration. So let's not go back there. But this was someone who was merely doing the charges that the state, fulfilling the charges that the state had given him. In fact, for a long time, we hadn't seen an Auditor General surcharging, doing. In fact, we had not seen it in the Fourth Republic. He was the first person who came and started enforcing.
Rambo style.
Well, whichever style you would say Daniel Domelevo went Commando, about it. So there are issues there about how the cookie crumbled. But the court has ruled. The question, though, with the time, some have said that when there are issues from the Electoral Commission and the rest, it can rule within the twinkling of an eye. 2 weeks, it could have been done with this. But we sat down, allowed this entire process to happen 3 years on, about 3 years on, and we brought a ruling. To what effect?
Well,
after all this time had lapsed.
I think the decisions are not the same.
I'm not saying they are the same, but looking at the degree of importance, you would have felt that the court would expeditiously deal with this.
The court did a smart thing in the sense that the rift, and you see, he would admit to the fact that when there's almost like a family contention and people are looking for divorce, the court has a way of delaying so that there's hope of reconciliation.
I do not think for someone
there's hope for reconciliation.
Who also dabbles in these legal circles. I don't see the correlation. In family circles, yes, sometimes it is done to tarry, and people can change their minds.
Employee disgruntlement.
People can change their minds at a point, and it is intentionally done. But in this instance, where's the correlation?
No. In this case, that let me put it very clearly, that there was a relationship in terms of an employee, quote unquote, of the state and the government, in that sense, the executive. And I think that in the wisdom of the judges, they felt that coming to a conclusion on this matter, considering even the aftermath, for instance, if he was brought back like a year after he had gone on that leave, who knows the impact that it would have on this country in terms of, relationship between the executive and the accountant and controller. So I think that in the wisdom, and they felt that if the benefits outweigh the cost in terms of the benefits of him having this peace of mind, and now, thanks to God, he has even another appointment, so he's working somewhere else, and the cost to the state, because these things are state decisions.
Okay,
so
I think
it was in the
your
interest of the state, that they looked at and arrived at this decision, which still, as it is, shows that they have made a decision very much at variance with what the president's...
That also leaves us with a sort of template that moving forward, and it is hoped that no other executive presidents will come and repeat similar exercises. It's been touted, though, that under Mahama, there was a similar happening. I've just forgotten the particular person involved, but there was something akin to this, but not much noise was made about it because maybe this person was not performing, so to speak, like Daniel Domelevo. But while you address that, I know you have a take quickly. I also want you to address Green Ghana Day. It's 3 days away. We're talking governance. And for me, I've asked questions about how much we've been pumping into these exercises, how many trees we have actually saved and all of that. And on the back of, I don't know whether you watched our news this morning, Itiwa, and still the campaign there, because it's one of the last that we have when it comes to such zones. on the back of Galamsey, again, governance. So you can address this. I know you have some brief thoughts there, and then I want you to go into Green Ghana Day and all
put
of
the
that.
two together because I have.
Oh, I know. So this will be reactions, and I want you
to
take those up.
on the issue of Dumolevo, I think that yes, I agree with Doc that it is a low in our governance. Unfortunately, it is one of many lows under this Nana Akufo-Addo Bawumia government. I mean, they have simply turned so many things upside down. I mean, things we thought a government didn't have the capacity to do, they have done overboard. And sometimes I just wonder how democratic watchers sit by and watch this government abuse every, good governance tenets that we know. I just can't, for the life of me, understand. And the justifications about the delay is neither here nor there. I think that it was uncalled for. It should have been, dismissed and dispatched with long ago, especially because we all know and agree that justice delayed is justice denied. And I just like the way Dumolevo has taken this. And I think that Doc must be careful when he uses this as, an example of how the judiciary is unbiased. The NDC had no interest whatsoever in this matter beyond just being citizens of Ghana and consent. NDC didn't have any interest in this matter.
Really?
And so for you to say that, it's like, okay, the NDC has also gotten some victory. It's rather a slam and a damnation of the judiciary, because the NDC really had no interest whatsoever beyond just the fact that we are all Ghanaians and we are concerned that our institutions, and people leading our institutions were treated in the manner that the government used executive power, to treat Dumolevo. So I don't think that it's a very good example to use. But I think that the judiciary themselves must take note of the reaction to this ruling. They must take note of the reaction to this ruling.
Yeah.
And then be guided. And I am sure if they are guided, they will enjoy the bipartisan, and, general support when they give out rulings that sits with the conscience of the people.
Right.
This particular ruling is one example that should guide them, that it doesn't matter even if the government is unhappy with the ruling, they can't challenge it because it would have been a ruling that makes sense and that sits with the conscience and the aspirations of the people. After all, justice emanates from the people. And so it must be dispensed in such a way that the people see it being delivered without any manipulation. So I just hope that you'll be guided. I wish we could speak about Jackie Quayson.
Actually, that's one of the concluding matters. So let's just let me do the questioning and you do that.
On Green Ghana, because I wanted to relate this to the Quayson case, but
okay, then if you want to draw linkages, then do it. Since it's still in the judiciary, then let's just go to it.
I mean, last night I spent, some part of my bedtime reading the 35-page ruling. And for the life of me, I couldn't, look, even before I got to the defendant's counsel, statement of case, I had thought that should be sensible, even though I'm not a lawyer. I mean, just the opening, I thought that, but for example, you make a case of the Australian, ruling, Australian court ruling, and you quote the exact provision that guided that ruling. That said that the person was not qualified to stand for elections. That's what the law says, that you are not qualified to stand for elections when you owe allegiance. And then you equate that to say you are not qualified to be an MP. I mean, and so I thought that, but that's not the same. They may be similar, but that's not the same. And so I wasn't surprised when I got to the, statement of case by the counsel of the first defendant, that the judge was making the case that you are not comparing like terms. Because the texts, for example, if the framers of the Constitution wanted to debar anyone from standing elections to be elected as member of parliament, they would have said so. But they did not say that you are disqualified from standing elections if you are not able to meet ABC. They said you are disqualified from being a member of parliament.
Right.
And the processes leading up to election does not qualify you to be a member of parliament. But, so sometimes I will just repeat that the judiciary should be guided by the ruling of Dumoulin, the case involving Dumoulin, and be encouraged, empowered to make rulings that make sense and that sit with the generality of the population, and not those kind of rulings that just leave you wondering whether you are a citizen based on your birth certificate or your passport. And so if you are not privileged enough to own a passport, then your citizenship can be questioned.
Very briefly, in just a few seconds, just tell me this. Are we, by these utterances, also suggesting, without saying, that when any particular party is in power, your party is in power, the judiciary plays along with you, and when his party is in power, the judiciary plays along with them? Is that the suggestion?
I haven't said so, and that's not what I am campaigning for. I am saying that the judiciary at all times must live above reproach. Its rulings must make sense and must be accepted by the generality of Ghanaians. Because you see, the law is a moral thing, and it
well, not necessarily. In fact,
it's not necessarily.
It has nothing to do with it.
No, it has morality. Okay, in law. Law has morality.
It has a bit of that.
So maybe I didn't put it back,
but a lot of the time,
rulings
are nothing.
Yes, the point I'm seeking to make is that the law stems from the people, and that's why the Constitution itself says that it should be dispensed in the name of the people.
It must be reflective.
It must be reflective of the thinking.
Also.
Yes.
Quick thoughts on that. Quick thoughts.
I also think that, in all fairness, when you are taking any case to the Supreme Court, do double checking of the case you are taking, because in all honesty, some cases did not merit going to the Supreme Court, and I can give many examples. And I think that the opposition party or the minority should also sometimes, I'm pleading with them, should double check what they want to go and present, because some of the things, and I can cite one.
Are you saying they are sloppy? Is that what you're trying to say?
I wouldn't use the word sloppy, but I'll use the word double checking, in the sense that you should be careful about your, checking your expectations, one, and then the end game. Do I really have a case? Does this case merit going there? And what is it going to do, if not just maybe for propaganda, or what is it really going to do for us? And I think that the onus is on them in terms of their legal team, political strategy people, to come to terms with the fact that not all cases necessarily have to.
So the merits of every case.
Yes.
All right. Gentlemen, to wrap the conversation, two quick questions. I started on the Green Ghana Day, vis-a-vis Galamsey, and so in one breath we are planting trees, in another we are polluting the environment. I also want to add up this bit. It's really passionate, it's really dear to me, it's something I'm very passionate about. Are you aware that, sanitary pads, they are considered some sort of luxury? There are some taxes on them. So you have 20% and 15%. I think the 20% is the import tax also, and then 15% for VAT. That's a whopping 35%. Well, you have neighboring countries that have done away with them. Nigeria, Tanzania, you have Rwanda, you have Kenya, among other countries. No taxes on them. Why should we tax periods? Do you get the problem? And look at the cost of them. The other day I was saying, when I shared my blunt thoughts, I actually purchased for some people who can afford to do that. Do you get it? And the cost of that, so I know firsthand, because I have to make some purchases for some people who can't afford them. Vulnerable people. Why should we have that?
I would have preferred we put...
So I'm putting it to both of you and hoping, since I'm not in Parliament, that maybe you can push add your voice to some of these.
Alcohol instead of sanitary pads. I would have wished that, this be transferred to that instead. And
I know there are some taxes already on those. Some of those four taxes that
I'm saying that
you brought back
from a medical standpoint, in terms of the benefit of sanitary pads and the adverse impact of alcohol and cigarette on us, I would rather prefer that this burden on sanitary pads be transferred onto cigarettes and alcohol so that the sanitary pads are left alone. That's just my...
I'm putting the challenge to both of you. Is this something you feel you could take up in Parliament, talk about? I'm not in Parliament, but you have the voice in Parliament. Is this something you could take up?
Now that you've reminded me about this, I can make a statement on sanitary pads. It's something that from time to time I buy for third-year students in JSS in support, just as you're saying, and I think that it's not a luxury, and all men who appreciate women should take this serious. That sanitary pads are not luxurious items, and is a necessary evil for women who, do this ritual every month.
It's through no choice of their own. And you know why? Recently at Love FM, there was a lady who came on board, much younger at the time. She didn't have the wherewithal, the means. Mm-hmm. She fell on this person who aided her, eventually had relations with her, impregnated her, infected her with HIV. All because she did not have
sanitary pad.
I don't know whether you'd also take it up from your end in Parliament, what your thinking is on that. And then we wrap on Green Ghana. It's a wrap on this conversation.
Yeah, I think I feel the way you feel. I think it's criminal that we are taxing periods in this country, especially if you look at the population data and the fact that we tend
51%
exactly
female,
and many of them are also in deprived communities. It's just unacceptable that we make condoms cheaper than pads. I think that it is a travesty of justice, and I think that as a country it must be a blot on our conscience. And I am for the removal of taxes on such items. I don't think that it makes sense at all. It is a natural occurrence, and people don't have a choice. It is not as if they can choose not to use sanitary pads. Yes, there may be other alternatives, but how healthy are those alternatives that are available, and even how comfortable are those alternatives? And I think that it is the reason why we must not.
Will you vocalize it in Parliament for us? I've got one from the majority, and I'll keep doing this.
I'm doing that. I'm doing that, and so I think that when the need arises for a vote to be taken in Parliament, you should be rest assured that I'll be voting on the side of a removal of the taxes on there.
So I just want us to do this. Our time is actually up, but I want us to take a quick swipe
because I know.
No. I'll let you go ahead.
It's actually two codes. One is the Australian law. It says any person who is under, and listen to the way it is called, is under any acknowledgement of allegiance, obedience, or adherence to a foreign power, or is a subject or a citizen or entitled to the rights of or privileges of a subject or a citizen of a foreign power, shall be incapable of being chosen or sitting as a senator or a member of the House of Representatives. So you see, it makes it clear that you are incapable of being chosen, you cannot sit as a senator, and you cannot sit at the House of Representatives. So they capture from all strands. But then you look at our law, which is used to mean the same thing as this, and it simply says that subject to the provisions of this article, a person shall not be qualified to be a member of Parliament unless a person shall not be qualified to be a member of Parliament. And yet we stretch it to mean that a member of Parliament begins at the nomination stage, and so at that point this law kicks in. Yes, there may be precedents on the Zenalta case, but if that was not expansive enough, that is why we say the law grows. And that's why we say the Supreme Court is the only jurisdiction, is the only court that can change its mind.
Right.
So what is wrong?
Unfortunately, we'll not have time now to get into the Green Ghana bit. Maybe some.
And I think Green Ghana is a criminal enterprise that has been set up by this government just to loot our money. It is a criminal enterprise.
What's your evidence on that?
Look, clearly, the trees the number of trees we are told that are, planted are never accounted for. What is accounted for is the money that is paid. We never get to see the trees. Yes, and so it means that it is owed and it will be paid. But where are the trees?
All right.
It's a criminal enterprise that has been set up to loot
final comments,
our hard-earned currency and to further destroy our forests. Look, you'll be shocked that Aisha Wang actually has a concession in this country, a forest concession.
Wait, are you saying
it's just a criminal enterprise?
Just hold a second for me. Has a concession now?
Yes,
as we speak.
Yes.
Where?
It is before Parliament for ratification. It is before Parliament for ratification. In this country.
Where?
I will give you the evidence if you are interested.
I'll look forward to the
last
evidence.
words. Today, Ghana should know that Dumso was an emergency and COVID too was an emergency. I rest my case.
Okay.
I don't know what you're saying.
Which schools did you attend at the secondary level? The National Science and Math quiz is back. I'm just interested.
St. Peter's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You attended my older brother's
St. Peter's.
of blessed memory.
Oh, it's Ghana Secondary in Tamale.
Pesco back.
Okay. So both of you feature every now and then.
Yes.
We're back at the regionals. What are you looking forward to from your schools?
Oh, Pesco has to shine.
Pesco has to shine. Yes. I remember some years back when you were quoting the Bible and all of that.
So my heart is with Ganasco, but my resources are with the schools from my constituency.
Yeah, I see.
Islamic Secondary.
All right.
They have been doing well of late in there.
Al-Hassan Suhuyini, of course, Member of Parliament for Tamale North, he joined the conversation. We also had Dr. Dixon Adomaku Kisi, Member of Parliament for Anyaso Utum, joining me in the studio on this conversation. But coming up, we're going to be taking a look at some other matters. The Ghana Mining and Energy Summit. It's a biennial conference and exhibition organized by the Ghana Chamber of Mines with endorsement from the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, among other pertinent agencies. We'll be having a conversation with them right here on the AM show. Do stay. Welcome back on the AM show. We get talking now about the extractive sector, and the Ghana Mining and Energy Summit is a biennial conference and exhibition organized by the Ghana Chamber of Mines with endorsement from the Lands and Natural Resources Ministry, the Minerals Commission, and the Environmental Protection Agency. And of course, we do know that the GMES has grown exponentially since the maiden event in 2013, 10 years ago, and it attracts industry participants, I should say, from across the world. Now, GMES 2023, the fifth summit in the series, is themed Harnessing Mining and Energy Potential for Sustainable National Development. And to help me get into those all-important matters, we have the CEO, Ghana Chamber of Mines, Dr. Suleimanu Kone, and engineer Dr. Celestina Alote. She is Vice President, Head of Sustainable Development at Goldfields, Ghana. Lady, gentlemen, a very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Even before we came into this conversation, especially for you, Dr. Alote, we were talking about taxing sanitary pads and all of that. I don't know whether you got a bit of that conversation. We should remove the taxes, you know, so.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Here we go. You have an advocate.
It should not be there in the first place.
It should not be there in the first place. I don't know why we are not emulating other African countries on this, because I have decided to champion that on air to give a voice. And I cornered the parliamentarians and they accepted to take it up in Parliament. So as we keep adding our voices, maybe we can take it up from there. But let's talk about this event that is coming up, the Ghana Mining and Energy Summit. I'll start with you, Dr. Kone. What is it all about?
It's about having intimate conversations about our endowments in energy and mining and how we can actually harness this for sustainable national development. Over the years, we've recognized that generally when we're speaking about mining, we tend to be speaking just exclusively about mining. And when we are talking about energy, exclusively about energy. But there is a nexus
there is potential for us to harness these two key sectors of the economy for broad-based socioeconomic development for our dear country. And we believe that this summit will really help us to interrogate some of these issues for the good of the country. And I'm quite excited about this summit.
If I were to pose the same question to you, the purpose, what the summit seeks to achieve, Dr. Alote, what would you tell me?
Well, mining has always been a leader in the practice of sustainability. We do so because of our stakeholders, and then a lot of us are global companies. So with us, we have a lot of good practices that I believe we should be able to share with other industries. So for us at Goldfields, being a world leader in sustainable practices, we see this as an opportunity for mining companies to share knowledge. We see it as an opportunity for us to interact with government, to interrogate, just like as Dr. Connie has said, how we can work together to improve. I mean, this morning I've been listening to your program, a lot of talk on energy, what we don't have, the cost of it. And so as mining companies, we want to bring up these issues and find how we can find synergies to reduce electricity use, to reduce the costs, to look at alternative technologies, alternative means of generating power to help move our country forward.
And I see a host of entities that are supporting you bring this. But even as all of this support is coming in, you'd ask yourself, what are the key areas that are going to be addressed, at this summit? What are the topical areas we're going to be addressing? I'll start with you this time.
Yeah, so one of the topics, the main topics, is climate change. And then that is energy. So
the big elephant in the room.
Exactly. We want to, mining companies currently are on a track implementing a lot of positive climate change initiatives at our operations. So for instance, at Goldfields, we have done a climate resilience study. And based on that, we are moving away from the use of diesel towards, much friendlier sources of energy, electricity generation.
So cleaner forms of energy.
Exactly. So currently, when it comes to our Accra office, we're using 100 kilowatts solar installation to power the office. Other mining companies are using things like solar hybrid air conditioners, photo cells to reduce electricity usage. A lot of other initiatives. Currently, we are trialing the use of BEV in our light vehicles.
I see.
Exactly. So, we are at the forefront, really. Mining companies are at the forefront of trialing these electrical vehicles, using them instead of diesel to reduce, first of all, the burden, of importation of, diesel and fuel, and then also to reduce our carbon emissions. So these are some of the topics that will be discussed.
Interesting commitments, especially where we find ourselves in Africa and facing the brunt of things, even as we seek to industrialize versus the other countries that have already industrialized, so to speak. But Dr. Kone, coming to you, those crucial areas that are going to be discussed, if I asked you to pick what your highlights would be, which ones would they be? Which ones are you most expectant, looking forward to?
Probably I'll be selfish in this particular case because I'll be speaking in the areas around mining, energy, and manufacturing, and how we can harness these two sectors to actually grow our manufacturing base. I'm quite excited about that because we see the potential, we see the opportunities for us to grow our manufacturing base, either through value addition of mineral products that our member companies actually produce, as well as opportunities to provide in the value chain of the mining industry to say, look, we are a captive market. If you're able to produce and produce competitively, you don't really have to stress. Companies are there to actually act as off-takers immediately, and these are issues I'm quite passionate about. I'm hoping that it would really be exciting for everybody to hear and appreciate that there are huge opportunities within the mining value chain for us to actually grow manufacturing and other sectors of the economy.
Now, this is a paid event, and there should be justification for someone to want to fork out that sort of money to come and attend this conference. Tell us a bit about why people should be making, beelines to attend this August event. Tell us a bit more about that. I'd like to hear from Dr. Kone before I go.
Very interesting. There are a number of people who want to have engagements with the movers and shakers, so to speak, of the industry. All of these guys are coming to the summit, and so that is the place to be. Not just that, but the kind of interactions we are going to have, the topics we are going to discuss, climate change, nexus between mining and security. Without security, you can't have meaningful mining or even oil and gas industry. All of these discussions, I believe, will be quite illuminating. And I guess that companies and individuals who will come there will leave the place well armed with the kind of information for them to be able to endeavor to do business with the mining industry. It's also about networking and cross-fertilization of ideas. So we believe that the mass of people we've been able to invite to participate in this summit should serve the purpose and serve the interests of those who actually would want to participate, want to pay money, good money to actually participate, because we believe that they will leave the premises of the Accra International Conference Center between the 7th and 9th, better informed about opportunities and how they can navigate around the mining industry and then the oil and gas industry as well.
Dr. Alote, Dr. Kone already started talking a bit about some of the topical areas, the nexus and all of that. I'd like you to just tease out a few of those topics you're going to be discussing come D-Day.
Yes, so, he spoke about, localization is a big drive that mining has initiated. Mm-hmm. And one of the things, as a Vice President of Sustainable Development, that keeps me awake is how we create value locally. Mm. And so, for instance, at Gold Coast, we're spending about 92% of all our purchases locally. We want to improve that. We want to be able to find out how we can, together find out business entrepreneurs who are looking for opportunities, just like as Dr. Connie said, so that we can find out how we can incubate businesses, how we can encourage Ghanaian businesses, because we are big players. We have, our spend is huge, so we are hoping that we can find individuals interested in entrepreneurship that we can work together with to improve, generation of income locally. Another topic that for me is also a highlight is also gender. That is one of the topics on there. Kwejiri Agri said you educate a woman, but after educating her, you need to employ her. And so mining companies have started a drive of increasing the number of females that are participating in the industry. And that is also one topic we want to find out how we can encourage the young ones coming up, in STEM projects to learn, because sometimes people are worried that there might be no jobs. They're also worried that mining industry is a very harsh industry. So we want the opportunity to share, like people like me and some of my female colleagues. So let our sisters or our younger sisters encourage them to take up STEM projects, because there's employment opportunities and it is doable. The industry is not a harsh industry at all.
So moving forward, what are your expectations? Come the event, post the event, Dr. Kone, what can we look forward to? Give us the relevant dates.
We're starting on the 7th, which is Wednesday, starting at 9:30. And then it's a 2-day conference. So the second day will be on the 8th. And then on the 9th, we have our AGM. So the exhibition will run for 3 days, conference 2 days. And then on the last day, we have our AGM. The expectation, like I said, is that people will be well informed about the industry and the opportunities. Doc mentioned some of the opportunities for females and what we need to really grow them within the industry at various levels of the sector. So more about information, sharing ideas, and I believe that we should be able to come up with actionable decisions. So it's not just talk, but at the end of the day, we are able to collate decisions we can actually implement and identify stakeholders we want to be engaging with, particularly at the policy level. So for example, Ministry of Trade and Industry, what do we need to do? Our own sector ministry, what do we need to do? As well as the Ministry of Energy. So it's quite all-encompassing.
All right. Ladies, gentlemen, any concluding comments? Anything else that you'd like to share with us and our audience ahead of this event?
Well, what I would say is that mining has always been at the forefront, because it's a heavily regulated industry at the far front of cutting-edge technology, state-of-the-art technology. So I think it would be interesting for people to come, particularly other industries, to learn, because the intention is to share knowledge of what is doable within the Ghanaian context. We are doing it. We are trialing BEV vehicles in Ghana. And so we encourage people to come to this summit to see what mining has to offer. It is not always that mining is negative. We are doing a lot in the area of sustainable.
I think I want to reiterate that. We expect people to come and witness some of the good things we're doing in the mining industry. They will never be disappointed coming over. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Suhuyini Kone. He is CEO, Ghana Chamber of Mines, and Engineer Dr. Celestina Alote, Vice President, Head of Sustainable Development, Goldfields at Ghana. Thank you so much for joining the conversation.